Chapter 1076. I hereby announce to everyone in the legendary continent that the Fire Kingdom will rise from the Eastern Sea and inherit the glory of the ancient civilizations, the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire. Today, on the first day of the first month of the first year of the Fire Calendar, we will officially become the new kingdom of the legendary continent. We will believe in the glory of the night, protect the character of justice, carry on the past, and protect the people of the kingdom. List used a dignified tone to clearly announce the oath that he had written earlier, and it was transmitted to the ears of every single person in the palace square. After saying that, he communicated with his own dragon telepathically and let out all kinds of dragon roars. Roar, 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 yo roar, Wuxia, and so on. The silent crowd also cheered. The fireworks team of mages who had long been ready around the square released all kinds of magic spells using magic equipment. The sky suddenly became colorful, and all kinds of beautiful magic spells bloomed, pleasing to the eye. The corner of List's mouth curled up slightly as he held the king's scepter in his hand and walked towards his throne on the platform. The throne was also specially made of magical metal alloy. It was nothing special but luxurious. While the crowd was still cheering, the palace servants and knight squires quickly walked into the square. They packed up all kinds of props that were no longer needed and rearranged the palace square to welcome the next step of the founding ceremony. List also took the opportunity to take a sip of water. He also took out the script book that he carried with him and glanced at it. When the cheers gradually died down, the whispers quickly grew louder. After the excitement, the nobles and civilians were all passionately discussing the dragon exhibition ceremony and the king's speech. The kingdom has finally been established. From now on, we can truly call ourselves the Flame People. Yes, there are no more Eagle Men, Moon Killer Men, or Sapphire Men. We are all Fire Men, the subjects of the Great King List. His Majesty's speech is too outstanding. Our Fire Kingdom has actually inherited the great civilizations of the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire. I know about the Moon Empire, but what is the Sun Empire? It doesn't matter what it is. Moon Sunday. I can tell that the Sun Empire is as great as the Moon Empire. The light on His Majesty's body is so bright that I can't open my eyes. A kingdom. I've actually witnessed the birth of a great kingdom in my lifetime. I've even been fortunate enough to participate in it and become a founding noble of the kingdom. A count on the viewing platform sighed emotionally. Last year, he had been a captive, but this year, he had become a founding count. His Majesty List has become a legend in the legendary continent, said a messenger from the duchy. A noblewoman with starry eyes clutched her chest and almost fainted from excitement. Although I don't agree with His Majesty's taste in clothes, his noble temperament is intoxicating. I really hope I can have the chance to dance with His Majesty. I also want to ride a dragon. A commoner boy clenched his fist. His name was Jim, and he had migrated to Blazing Island with his mother during the development war last year. He was already studying at the Knight Academy. Life on Flame Island is too blissful. Thank you, His Majesty. He will always protect us. His Majesty is the greatest knight. Countless praises came from people of various statuses. However, not everyone was influenced by the king's speech. At least, the Eagle Kingdom's emissary, Alexander White Iron, had been deeply worried since the beginning of the dragon exhibition ceremony. Eight-headed dragon. Although the founding ceremony is fancy, there is no doubt about List's strength. Adonis asked me to examine the Fire Kingdom. How should I report to him? List had already displayed an unimaginable foundation at the founding ceremony. Any country with an eight-headed dragon would be able to do whatever they wanted. Alexander knew King Adonis's plan. It was to show weakness to the enemy and then deal a fatal blow. However, it was easy to show weakness, but where would the fatal blow come from? Kill List? A dragon knight who could subdue an eight-headed dragon and a dragon knight who could escape the Empire's assassination. How unfathomable was the strength of such a dragon knight? With such a dragon knight and an eight-headed dragon guarding, it was unrealistic to expect the Blazing Kingdom to collapse easily. The first to bear the brunt of the Blazing Kingdom is my Eagle Kingdom. The Iron and Steel Ridge and the Blast Furnace Castle can still survive, but where can my Eagle Kingdom hide? There were cheers all around, but Alexander was silent. However, he was not alone. Beside him, the Blast Furnace Castle Kingdom's envoy was also silent. Unlike Alexander's worries, although this envoy was also wary, he was thinking more about how to maintain the structure of the four kingdoms in the northeast of the legendary continent. The triangle was the most stable structure. The people in this world did not study geometry, so they probably did not know this truth. However, people with a little political acumen would guess that it was easy for three kingdoms to coexist. Whichever kingdom was stronger, the other two kingdoms could unite and avoid being swallowed. However, there would be many variables in four kingdoms. The Blast Furnace Castle Kingdom was powerful, but they had to consider more. Liszt did not care about what the dragon exhibition ceremony and the king's speech had made the envoys think. He quickly signaled for the founding ceremony to enter the next process, the enfeoffment of nobles. The lords were the first to be enfeoffed. As there were too many people, naturally, there was no need for Liszt to complete the enfeoffment ceremony personally. He only needed to follow the lines written in the script book and say a few words. My followers, the war is over, but tomorrow still needs to be protected. Looking at the night lined up, Liszt was in high spirits. I will repay courage with glory, loyalty with love, and betrayal with revenge. Witness the glory of the night. Clatter. A group of knight knelt on both knees, straightened their bodies, and looked at Liszt. More than a dozen clerks from the palace held all the prepared materials and handed them to each lord according to the list, including badges, clothing, civilized sticks, and proof of fief. When all the nobles wore the badges on their chests, Liszt solemnly glanced around and said, in view of your performance on the battlefield, charging bravely and fearlessly, obtaining glorious glory, and bringing a lot of military achievements for the Fire Kingdom. Now, as the king of the Fire Kingdom, I confer you the title of Lord of the Kingdom. You will be in charge of fief, provide for night, and drive for me. The knights stood up one after another and solemnly performed the knight's oath of allegiance. They loudly echoed, I will be in charge of fief, provide for night, and drive for my lord. Just like that, the enfeoffment ceremony was completed. The lords left one by one and returned to their original positions on the viewing platform. After the lords, it was the turn of the baron. The same lines, the same process. Soon, these more than 1,000 baron also returned to their original positions. After that, it was the 366 viscounts. Slightly different from the enfeoffment ceremony for baron and lord, the enfeoffment ceremony for viscounts was the addition of the king's roll call. The clerks were responsible for distributing the enfeoffment materials. Liszt read the enfeoffment of the viscounts in a clear voice. Blair Steele, as the king of the Fire Kingdom, I confer you the title of Viscount of the Three Leaves County. Blair, who had followed Liszt since the Flower Town, excitedly performed the knight's oath of allegiance and responded, choking with sobs, I will be in charge of the Three Leaves County, provide for night, and drive for my lord. Liszt nodded slightly. Liszt then went before the next Viscount and read in a clear voice, Isaiah Moss, as the king of the Fire Kingdom, I confer you the title of Viscount of the Drizzle County. Every time the enfeoffment was read, a Viscount loudly responded with an oath of allegiance. This lengthy yet solemn scene made the blood of the commoners and lesser aristocrats watching the nation-building ceremony boil. In particular, the children who were still young couldn't wait to immediately run home to cultivate chi and become a glorious knight. They would make contributions on the battlefield and receive the king's enfeoffment. Just like the dazzling viscounts and aristocrats on the scene, they would receive the attention of the audience. The Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1077. After pondering for a long time, he did not know what to write next. To be honest, the excitement of writing The Big Dragon is Dead had long passed. Now, Lao Bai was purely trying to come up with a complete ending for the book and was holding on. It was estimated that there were 300,000 words left, or even less, for the book to come to an end. But don't worry, Lao Bai would not leave a bad ending. He would make a beautiful arrangement for List and bring this somewhat anticlimactic farming story to a successful conclusion. Finally, there are no updates today. My state is really terrible. I'm very sorry. The big dragon is dead. Applies for leave. Currently typing. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1078. Even if it was just the reading of everyone's name and a sentence, the ceremony of conferring viscounts still lasted for a full 2 hours. In addition to the previous night parade, the dragon exhibition ceremony, and the king's speech, it was already 10 o'clock in the morning. The process of the founding ceremony in the palace square had been completed, and it began to move to the palace of the sun, moon, and stars to begin the conferring of counts and marquises. It was not much different from the process of conferring viscounts, baron, and lord. It was just that each count and marquis was more long-winded. In this way, 21 marquises and 64 counts rushed to successfully complete the conferring ceremony before noon. The Fire Kingdom is newly established. The founding nobles are not only lords, baron, viscounts, counts, and marquises, but also 3 dukes. Lee William Tulip, Duke of Tulip Island, Piero Greyiron, Duke of Sycamore Island, and Bruce Bossy, Duke of the Saltwater Sea, who was unable to participate in the ceremony. List presided over the conferring ceremony for the whole morning. His mouth was dry and his mind was in a mess. His earlier excitement and agitation had been worn away, but he still forced himself to finish the last part of the ceremony. We will hold a separate conferring ceremony for the 3 dukes, and now it's time for the luncheon. Everyone, please join me and enjoy it. The luncheon was held in the palace hall. All the nobles participated in the banquet together. Only the high-ranking nobles and envoys from various countries gathered together. The middle-ranking nobles gathered together, and the low-ranking nobles gathered together. There was no such thing as equality for everyone. The hierarchy under the knight system was so strict, but no one would complain. On the contrary, the low-ranking nobles would only be extremely envious and eager to squeeze into the circle of the high-ranking nobles. The knight class had always been synonymous with forging ahead. At least in the new Fire Kingdom, the knight had not yet decayed and kept forging ahead. The grand founding ceremony came to a perfect end with the end of the luncheon. However, the impact of the ceremony quickly spread from within. The nobles of the fief had already left Flame Island with the serfs and followers that had been assigned long ago and returned to their own fief. In particular, a group of high-ranking nobles took away a large number of serfs, reducing the population of Flame Island from 5 million to 3 million. Among them, 2 million were direct subjects of List, and the remaining 1 million were subjects of the feudal nobles. The feudal nobles did not have the right to enfeoffment, but they could provide for the knight. The nobles of the city, the Knight of the Burning Legion, had taken over the management of many cities. However, there were still many more cities that were still under List's name. After losing a large number of people, these cities needed a large number of people to replenish their various industries. In the era of automation and industrialization, population was the most important labor force. List had just been excited for a day, but he was already tied down by a large number of kingdom affairs. Even though he had established the outer cabinet and the inner cabinet, there were still many decisions that he had to make. Your Majesty, Father, just call me List. There's no need to consider the title of king between us. After all, List's soul was that of an earthling, and he could not adapt to the relationship of a father becoming a follower of his son, even though he knew that such a situation also happened in ancient China. He vaguely remembered that the Qing dynasty was still the Ming dynasty. There was an emperor who did not have a son, so he adopted a child from the royal family as his heir. After this child inherited the throne, because he could not deal with his biological father, he started a mighty battle with the ministers. Fortunately, the Fire Kingdom was created by List, and he could set the rules however he wanted. Lee William showed a gratified smile, although he did not mind bowing down to his son. Under the knight system, this was not a problem. However, List's attitude made him quite satisfied and proud. List, now that the feudal nobles have moved out, Fire Island will soon fall into a problem of population shortage. What is the Outer Cabinet solution? The Outer Cabinet has discussed it several times, but no decision has been made. But in conclusion, there are two solutions. The first one is to stop the new city plan and stabilize the developed cities. When the population has increased, then we can consider the new city construction. The second one is to immediately launch a war to plunder the population. List thought for a moment and did not respond directly. Instead, he asked, how far is the joint plan with the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom going? Lee William shook his head and replied somewhat helplessly. Although the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family has decided to cooperate with our country and divide up the Eagle Kingdom, the specific details and the distribution of interests cannot be finalized in a short period of time. Contact King Osborne directly and let him urge the nobles under him. The war should be started as soon as possible. We cannot give the Eagle Kingdom a chance to react. Osborne has a false appearance. On the surface, he appears to be a bold and ambitious king, but in fact, he is also an overcautious and conservative person. According to the information sent by the blood servant from the City of Steel, Osborne held several meetings to discuss it. The ministers quarreled, but there was still no concrete result. What a waste. Rottenwood cannot be carved. Liz could not help but curse. I am in charge of the dragon-slaying battle. He is in charge of the night charge, and the Eagle Kingdom is divided in half. No matter how simple the arithmetic problem is, it still takes so long to consider. The whole plan has been going on for more than a year, hasn't it? It has been a year and a half. I personally went to the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom to finalize the plan, Lee Williams said. What a procrastinator. If it were not for the fact that I did not have enough night to annex the entire Eagle Kingdom, I would have taken my dragon and directly attacked them. This sentence was not a boast. At the level of the Dragon Knight, he was already invincible. It was just that the strength of his subordinates was too weak. It was too risky for the Fire Kingdom to annex the Eagle Kingdom alone. It was possible that they would not only face the Eagle Kingdom, but also the Iron and Steel Ridge, the Blast Furnace Castle, and even several other neighboring kingdoms. It was hard to say whether the Eagle Kingdom would ask for help. After all, the Eagle royal family had once revealed the news of the Holy Dragon to the noble Frost Empire. Anything could happen if they were pushed too hard. Only by involving the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and giving out some benefits to appease the neighboring kingdoms could they successfully annex the Eagle Kingdom. Lee Williams suddenly said, List, there's one point worth discussing. The appearance of the eight-headed dragon at the founding ceremony. I am worried that as your deterrence further increases, the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family may very likely give up the cooperation. Father, do you mean that Osborne might be frightened by the speed of my dragon? That's right. You rode the Holy Dragon, the Fire Dragon, the Magical Metal Dragon, and now you're riding the Water Dragon. It's only been a few years. Every time you ride a dragon, the three kingdoms will be more wary of you. What I'm more worried about is that the three kingdoms may have secretly begun to ally with each other. Is there any sign? Not yet, but I dare not rule out this possibility. List frowned. This possibility was indeed not impossible. If he was the king of the three kingdoms, he would also be extremely afraid of himself. The royal families of the three kingdoms had accumulated for hundreds and thousands of years to gather a few dozen dragons, but he himself had only spent a few years. Thinking of this, he slightly reflected and sighed. It seems that I have indeed been too high profile. The next time I ride a dragon, I should raise it on an uninhabited island. It is not advisable to expose it too much. The Duke of Tulip Island, who was beside him, pretended not to care and picked up his teacup and took a sip of tea. Chapter 1079. In any case, the success or failure of the plan to unite the Steel Ridge Kingdom was still uncertain. The lack of population had always been a huge problem for the Fire Kingdom, and List, who has been on doing things quickly, was not willing to slow down the development plan. Therefore, the best way was to launch a war for the expansion order. However, the content of the expansion order has to be innovated. Plundering the hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom once a year is too frequent. List said, he naturally understood that you couldn't just grab a place and pull it. You had to move to another place to continue pulling it. If we can't plunder the Eagle Kingdom, we can only plunder the Snow Wind Duchy. Lee Williams said. Then inform Marquis Yevich Waterpinut of Realgar City and Marquis Amat of Thorn's left territory to speed up the attack on the Snow Wind Duchy. Before June, I need to send back at least 500,000 serfs from the Snow Wind Duchy. The more night, the better. The Snow Wind Duchy was not a large duchy. It was located on a plateau and was very barren. Its population was only 6 or 7 million. When the civil war between the first prince and the second prince had just started, Yevich had already cooperated with his father-in-law Matt to secretly transfer more than 500,000 people to the Fire Kingdom. Now, they had to transfer more than 500,000 people. In just a year, the population would be reduced by 1/5. In addition, the Yellowstone Plain Kingdom was also secretly pulling the wool. Perhaps by the time the two princes decided the winner, the Snow Wind Duchy would only have half of its population left. Of course, this had nothing to do with List. He was only concerned about the development of the Fire Kingdom. Then I'll go arrange it. By the way, Father, I plan to hold your dukedom and fiefment ceremony on January 15th. I'll have the palace prepare for the ceremony. Father, you can just wait for the 15th. I'm not picky. Any time is fine. Lee Williams' calm face revealed an unconcealable smile. Once upon a time, he was just a count of the Sapphire Duchy, struggling to become a marquis. He thought that before his chi was exhausted, being promoted to a marquis would be a blessing of the knight's glory. However, with the rise of his second son, List, his dream became within reach. Unknowingly, he had already obtained the title of marquis and obtained the domain knight's secret book, becoming an existence below the Dragon Knight. Strength and ambition always complemented each other. However, it hadn't been long since his ambition had been aroused. Just as he had begun to look forward to the position of Duke, the position of Duke had already arrived. Everything seemed like a dream. When he left the Palace of Stars, he felt as if he was floating. Of course, a domain knight could fly in the air for a long time. His mount, the storm dragon horse with a broken horn, was pacing back and forth in the palace square. The broken horn on the head of this super dragon was much more magnificent. Not only was the main body made of magical metal alloy, but it was also embedded with fine gems and engraved with magical runes. It was custom-made by the Magic Association. It was equivalent to a powerful piece of magical equipment. William mounted the horse and shouted, "White Dragon Horse, let's go." The broken horn storm dragon horse immediately flapped its wings and soared into the sky like a bolt of lightning, charging towards the flame royal city. A moment later, he stopped in front of the tall, stately building of King City's administrative office. The entire administrative office was a 6-story building from the Victorian era. It faced the triumphal arch and was painted gold. It was very eye-catching. The building was very long and divided into 3 sections. The first section was the bureaucracy of the King City. The second section was the bureaucracy of the cabinet, and the last section was the bureaucracy of the outer court. William's office was on the 6th floor. It was spacious and luxuriously decorated. He allowed his valet to take off his coat and went directly to his stone desk. He signaled to his assistant, summon the ministers of the outer court, and hold a magic forum meeting. The time is set for 2:30 p.m. Yes, sir. The female assistant, whose appearance could be rated 80 out of 100, twisted her slender waist and walked into the small meeting room that came with the office. She was tapping on a slightly larger and more complicated magic forum. Her fingers were slender and magic flowed at her fingertips. She was obviously a magician. Of course, the term magician in the Flame Kingdom was about to be abolished. She was now a registered arcanist. She specialized in communications and was specially trained to operate the magic forum. The magic forum lit up. Like a projector, it projected more than 10 screens on the walls of the meeting room. Very quickly, some of the screens turned from gray and white to color. Then, some people dressed like the female assistant appeared on the screen. Just like on Earth, from text communication to video communication, The Magic Forum also entered the video era after continuous development and improvement. The Flame Kingdom had already conquered the teleportation magic circle. Developing video communication didn't pose any technical difficulties. Achi used her free time to come up with a video communication plan and handed it over to the Magic Guild to design. However, the cost of the Video Magic Forum was extremely high. Currently, the production was only enough for the cabinet and outer court members to use and train professional communication arcanists to operate it. Others couldn't touch it yet. Assistant Portia, is the Prime Minister calling for the Magic Forum meeting? A woman on the screen asked. Yes, Assistant Olivia. Please inform the First Minister of Internal Affairs to attend the Magic Forum meeting, the female assistant replied. I'll inform Sir Geoffrey now. However, he's currently patrolling the territory. He might need some time. The meeting will be held at 2:30 p.m. Please inform the First Minister of Internal Affairs. Yes. In this way, the female assistant notified the people on the screen one by one and determined the time of the Magic Forum meeting. When she finished the notification and was about to close the Magic Forum, Lee William came in with a glass of red wine. Portia, contact Tulip Castle for me. Yes, sir. Portia's assistant operated on the Magic Forum and soon projected another screen. However, when the Magic Forum was connected, the screen was still gray. Tulip Castle didn't have a video Magic Forum. In addition, Tulip Castle was a newly built Duke's Castle on Tulip Island. The Coral Island had been returned to the Sapphire Duchy. The former Tulip Castle had become a thing of the past. Only Black Horse Island was still in the form of an enclave belonging to List. There were natural nodes on Black Horse Island. In the future, the magic teleportation circle would be open to increase control over the Sapphire Duchy. This is Tulip Castle. A male voice came from the Magic Forum. Although video communication couldn't be done, the ordinary Magic Forum had already been upgraded to voice communication. Levis? Lee William asked. Yes, Sir Father. How is Loria's body? Very good. The medical arcanists are constantly observing. The twins in her belly are developing healthily. Levis's voice revealed excitement. This was Loria's second child. Yes. Lee William was also very happy. Although his 4-year-old grandson Richard had shown excellent talent, he still had expectations for the unborn twins. After all, with the example of List, who could guarantee that the second son wouldn't be a legend? In fact, since the rise of List, his legendary story had changed the embarrassing situation of many aristocratic second sons. It turned out that most aristocrats were indifferent to their second sons and let them do as they pleased. After all, the eldest son was the inheritance system. As long as the eldest son was cultivated, the family could continue. But now, while many aristocrats cultivated their eldest son, they were also willing to share resources to cultivate their second son. They didn't want to give birth to the next List. As long as the second son could make a little success, the cultivation would not be in vain. And List had also become an irreplaceable idol in the minds of many aristocratic second sons. Every day, a large number of aristocratic second sons from the 3 kingdoms and many duchies came to seek shelter from thousands of miles away. Many of the aristocrats in the city were such aristocratic second sons. Without family resources to use, they were completely dependent on List's support and became a vassal of the Flame family. After a pause, Lee Williams said indifferently, Levis, my nobility ceremony is on the 15th. You calculate the time yourself, bring grandmother and the others, and rush to the sun, moon, and stars palace. Nobility ceremony on the 15th? Please rest assured, Sir Father, I will arrange for my family and immediately rush to the sun, moon, and stars palace. Levis laughed. Chapter 1080. My dear, the date of Lord Father's conferment has been set. It will be on the 15th of this month. Ha! Our Tulip family is about to become a Duke family. After ending the magic communication, Levis immediately went to his wife's room. He said excitedly to the pregnant Rolia Golden Wheat, This is really delightful news. From Sapphire to Flame Island, The Tulip family is finally going to enter a glorious moment. Rolia gently rubbed her belly. Although she was also smiling, she wasn't as excited as Levis. Isn't this already clear? Ever since List promised to bestow Tulip Island to Lord Father, the title of Duke was already clear. Even if that's the case, I won't feel at ease if I don't wait for it. There's nothing to feel at ease about, Levis. You don't have to care too much about the details of the title, land, wealth, and so on. In the Fire Kingdom, you just need to follow List closely. You are his elder brother. The deep bond between you two brothers is far more secure than any noble title. Don't worry, Lord Father is here. Levis didn't care at all. Rolia frowned slightly, but quickly relaxed. The Tulip family will be handed over to you one day. You can't alienate List. Levis was speechless. You always worry about these useless things. Rolia said seriously, Richard is already 4 years old. Levis, I have a decision. What is it? When the twins are born, I plan to ask Lord Father to send Richard to the Palace of Stars on Sunday. Firstly, he can accompany Lord Father. Lord Father is the Prime Minister of the Outer Pavilion. He will be staying in the Fire Kingdom more than in Tulip Castle. Secondly, he can receive training as a Knight of the Burning Legion as soon as possible. Is there a need for this, Rolia? Richard is only 4 years old. When I was 4, I was still peeing and playing with mud in the castle's garden. Yes, Rolia insisted. She announced this decision at the castle's banquet that night. After all, Madame Marie was not Levis's biological mother and did not express her opinion. Madame Penelope agreed. Rolia's decision is correct. Although I am reluctant to let little Richard leave Tulip Castle, he can always shine on List's glory in the Palace of the Sun, Moon, and Stars. Little Richard is very lucky to have a dragon knight as an uncle. Grandmother, it's just the basic training of a knight. Do you think that I, his father, can't teach him? No matter what, I'm a Sky Knight. How can a Sky Knight be compared to a Dragon Knight? Levis, you're already 30 years old, but you're still an ordinary Sky Knight. Don't you have any idea? Madame Penelope glanced at Levis. She used to be most satisfied with this eldest grandson, but now she only had eyes for List. Cough, cough. Levis coughed awkwardly. He really wanted to say that a 30-year-old Sky Knight was not a bad performance. However, his grandmother made an example of a legendary Dragon Knight like List, who was as dazzling as the sun. This made him speechless. All the young geniuses in the northeast corner of the legendary continent lived in List's shadow. Basically, List was an existence that subverted everyone's perception. Seeing this, Rolia smiled and said, Let's ask Father's opinion when we reach the Fire King City. 4-year-old Richard already has the ability to live without his parents. Although she said she wanted to ask William's opinion, everyone knew that Rolia had already made up her mind. Levis shrugged his shoulders. In fact, he understood Rolia's thoughts and knew that this would help Richard. He just felt that Richard was too young at the age of 4. However, when he turned his head and glanced at his son, who was sitting upright like an adult, he inexplicably felt that this might not be a bad thing. Rolia's discipline towards Richard was too strict. She basically did not allow him to play like a normal child. She had instilled aristocratic etiquette and the way to govern from the age of 2. This kind of childhood was scary just thinking about it. Thus, he spoke with the tone of the heir of the Tulip family and said in an unquestionable tone, I will bring Richard to inspect the construction of the manors in the next 2 days. You guys stay in the castle and pack your luggage. We will set off for the Fire King City in 3 days. It had not been long since the founding of the kingdom, and everything was busy. In the midst of the busy time, List unexpectedly received a new letter from the magic platform. It was sent by the 6 mermaids that were traveling around the sea. Your Majesty, we have already started our return journey from the westernmost part of the legendary continent. The data of the coastline calculated by the sextant has already been packaged and sent back to the Guild of Magic. Apologies to you. There's been a delay in the year-long journey around the sea. However, although we did not find any mermaids, we have captured many sea elves, including 2 great elves. The magic platform's message was very long. It had already been recorded on a piece of paper by the communication arcanist. List continued reading. We have discovered a few ruins of the Sea Kingdom. Unfortunately, it has been a long time, and the Naga and clown fish have long disappeared. In the westernmost part of the legendary continent, we have also encountered a legendary sea monster, the Hydra. Unfortunately, it was too strong, and we were unable to capture it. The mermaids reported what they had seen and heard in the past year of traveling around the sea in the form of essays. There was not much useful information. It was just the discovery of the Hydra, and the location of the coastline by the sextant, as well as the fact that the elves were worthy of attention. Reply to the mermaids. End the voyage as soon as possible and send the elves back. After reading the message, List ordered, by the way, send over the results of the kingdom's enfeoffment of Duke Burabosi and the other 6 marquises. He could not criticize the mermaids to hurry back to work, but he still had to warn them about their attitude. Yes, your majesty. The arcanist in charge of the communication immediately bowed and left. After settling the urgent affairs at hand, List quickly arrived at the Mage Tower. He had come to inquire about the progress of the coastline survey of the legendary continent. Chris, you have received the location of the sextant sent by the mermaids. Has the map been drawn? Your majesty, the rough sketch has been drawn. Chris gestured to the arcanist in charge of the mapping, who spread a map on the table. The map was huge, but it only had an incomplete outline, and a small part of it had detailed records. So this is the legendary continent. Let's look at the map. The coastline that had been drawn on the map outlined the legendary continent as an irregular shape. There is a large part of the northern part of the continent that did not have a coastline, because that was a place that the mermaids had not traveled to. However, the outline of the legendary continent had been drawn, and the geographical location and area of the 3 kingdoms in the northeast corner of the continent could be clearly compared. The area of the 3 kingdoms added together is only equivalent to 1/20th of the total area of the legendary continent. It is indeed an inconspicuous corner. The Flame Islands are here, the Sapphire Islands are here. And from the looks of it, the Eagle Kingdom is completely surrounded by the Steel Ridge, the Furnace Castle, and the Yellowstone Plain. As long as these 3 kingdoms are cleared, it will be easy to nibble away at it. Looking at the large blank area of the map, List was already imagining how to conquer it. Sooner or later, his strength would not allow him to keep a low profile. Conquering the legendary continent gradually moved from the level of fantasy to the level of practical planning. Chapter 1081. The conferring ceremony of the Duke of Tulip Island, Lee William Tulip, was not too grand, especially with the extravagant scene of the founding of the nation. But to the Tulip family, this was the most glorious moment. In the name of Lee William, a 3-day banquet was held in the Fire Kingdom, inviting a large number of nobles who stayed in the Fire Kingdom. After that, Levis and the rest returned to Tulip Island. Lee William continued to be the Minister of Foreign Affairs, stationed in the Fire Kingdom. Levis's son, Richard, who was also List's nephew, stayed in the Palace of Sun, Moon, and Stars. List liked this nephew very much, so he would not refuse to nurture him. But he was busy and could not discipline him himself. There would be servants to take care of him, and there would be teachers from the Royal Knight Academy to teach him. Chris, has the reform agenda of the Guild of Magic been decided? List came to the Mage Tower in Fireforge City again and asked the First Minister of Arcana, Chris Truth. Your Majesty, after a few years of discussion, the registered mages of the Guild of Magic have completely adapted to the Arcanist system, so there is not much resistance to the reform. The plan to restructure the Guild of Magic into the Royal Arcana Academy has been approved by the Arcanist Assessment Committee. The Guild of Magic had been a product of excess from the beginning. Now that the Fire Kingdom had been established, it was time to change it according to List's will. Referring to the American university system on Earth, List's ideal scientific system was the integration of production, learning, and research. The Royal Knight Academy had been established to nurture elite knight, and it was similar to the National Defense University and West Point Military Academy. Now, the Royal Arcana Academy was to be established to nurture all kinds of arcanists and undertake magical research tasks. This way, an education system for both knight and arcanist could be formed. At the same time, education resources from all over the country would be integrated, and ordinary schools would be set up. Knight and arcanist courses would be set up to provide a continuous supply of talents for the kingdom. This was undoubtedly a little ahead of the time, and it was hard to say what impact it would have. However, List did not care. His strength had broken through the horizon, and he already had the capital to do as he pleased. There was no other reason for him to do as he pleased. A dragon was just that willful. Now that you've passed the assessment, let's finish the reorganization as soon as possible. Well, since Achi and Laird don't want to manage the mundane affairs, you're the first Arcana Minister and the first Dean of the Royal Arcana Academy. Chris smiled and nodded. As you wish, Your Majesty. After a pause, Chris asked again, then, Your Majesty, will the finances of the Royal Arcane Academy be provided by the kingdom, or by your internal court? Bearing the burden of the kingdom meant that the local lords would have to pay taxes to bear the burden. The internal court had provided it, meaning that it was the Flame family's personal burden. Both sets of finances were List's money. It was just that the money was used for different purposes. One was the treasury, the money collected from taxes and used for the construction of the kingdom. The other was a private stash of money. The money earned from their fiefs could be spent as they pleased. The kingdom will bear the responsibility. List said expressionlessly. I'll gradually integrate the arcanists into the noble system. In the future, the Royal Arcane Academy will no longer be supported by me. The talents of the Arcane Academy will be shared by all the fiefs and nobles. Of course, the research results can also be shared. Scientific research was a bottomless pit, and so was magical research. He didn't want to pay for it alone. He could use the name of the Royal Arcane Academy to collect some taxes from the feudal nobles. Then he could throw in some careless research results to stop the nobles from complaining. I understand. So, will the Royal Arcane Academy be located in the Magic District of the Fire Kingdom? Yes. The Magic Guild was being reorganized into the Royal Arcane Academy. Mages who were obsessed with magical research had to take time out to go through all kinds of procedures to become teachers of the Royal Arcane Academy or to attach their own laboratories to the Arcane Academy. Applications for funds, staffing, and all kinds of messy things came one after another. Mages didn't have a good time, and so did the knight. As the fiefs and nobles took away a large number of knight and officials, the cities and towns had to send new knight to take over. In such a situation of national change, all kinds of unexpected situations were constantly happening. However, it did not affect the spring plowing work in the first year of the fire calendar. The serfs were short of hands, and a large number of wasteland could not be cultivated. But at least there would be a large number of serfs rushing to plant the farmland cultivated by the elves. List's own farmland could also be allocated enough fertilizer to be spread. There is another important reason why the spring plowing work is not affected, is that there is a serious shortage of elves. In particular, the fiefs and nobles took away their elves, and a large number of plantations were abandoned. It can't be said to be abandoned, but the harvest depends on the glory of the night, said Lee William, Duke of Tulip Island, when reporting this year's spring plowing work. List nodded. The speed of elves breeding can't keep up, so the development order has to continue to be issued. We can't let go of the Eagle Kingdom. By the way, Father, has the envoy of the Steel Ridge Kingdom confirmed that King Osborne has clearly refused to join hands with me and divide the Eagle Kingdom? Yes, the Sapphire Duchy's change of allegiance to the Fire Kingdom has caused a greater impact than expected. King Osborne attaches great importance to the face of the aristocracy. Perhaps he is just taking advantage of the situation. Seeing that I am powerful, he is unwilling to join me in plotting the Eagle Kingdom, fearing that I will continue to grow stronger. List shook his head. Forget it. If he refuses, then so be it. Recently, I have a vague feeling that there's a new dragon waiting for me to ride in this sea. Another one? Lee Williams stared. It's just a feeling. It's hard to say whether it's true or not. However, my strength has been steadily improving, so it's not surprising that there are one or two more dragons. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Since the disappearance of the smoke mission and the birth of the smoke dragon, he could take the initiative to stir the threads of fate. A while ago, the phoenix perching parasol tree dragon elf Annie had told him that the two phoenix perching parasol trees that had been the focus of attention had successfully bred two sprite worms. This was a powerful proof. It proved that he could take the initiative to attack and clearly arrange things around him. Recently, he felt that there was a new dragon in the Sea of the Flame archipelago. As long as he could stir the threads of fate with his will again, he would be able to grasp the new dragon in his hands. I'm a child of glory. The glory of a knight is constantly guiding me. Father, I will leave the kingdom to you and the outer court. I will be away for a while to look for my new dragon. What else could Lee Williams say? Dragons were the greatest in the world. You can rest assured and look for the dragon. I will look after the kingdom for you. Thereupon, List quietly left the palace of sun, moon, and stars. He was not in a hurry to look for a new dragon. Instead, he went to the dragon pit mine and met the gray-mouthed iron dragon Aon, who had made the dragon pit mine his dragon nest. Aon, during this period of time, let's practice hard together and form a spirit imprint as soon as possible. Roar, Aon responded. After the light emerald dragon Ethan and the fire dragon Leo, the invisible bard had recently reached perfection. His mind now had a clear and inextinguishable figure of List. As for the other dragons, the bone dragon Winnie could not form a spirit imprint. The little water dragon Walter and the aluminum dragon Connor still had no shadows. The mountain copper dragon Marta only had shadow. Only in Aoun's mind, List's shadow was already indistinct. It was not far from perfection. After touching Aoun's scales, he could not help but ponder. How to stir the threads of fate is very particular. For example, stirring a sprite worm is a piece of cake. But to involve a dragon, I must follow the trajectory of the threads and borrow its strength. This was the formation mechanism of the smoke mission. In the smoke mission, the reward could only be obtained after completing the mission. This process was the most effortless way to stir the threads of fate. Now that List had transformed into a smoke dragon, he was merely turning the passive smoke mission into an active attack. Using his own will as the guide, he would proactively stir the threads of fate and obtain the content he wanted. When Aoun and I reach perfection, we will probably be able to take advantage of the situation to involve this new dragon. However, I can feel that there are many threads of fate in the surroundings, waiting for me to stir them one by one. Behind every thread of fate was a bountiful harvest. But I am only one person and cannot split myself. What a blissful worry. Chapter 1082. Happy New Year to everyone from DeLong is dead currently typing. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 1083. Every time he trained with the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orn, List could clearly feel that the power of destiny was pulling on the silk threads with greater strength. Destiny is indeed mysterious, but it's not so ethereal that it can't be captured. It also has a trajectory that needs to be followed. I may not understand what this trajectory is, but if I follow this feeling and operate according to the trajectory that the smoke dragon sensed, destiny will be a sword in my hand. Roar. Orn let out a dissatisfied roar. He was reminding List not to think about any other dragons when training with him. List didn't argue and just smiled. Understood, Orn. Let's continue. He concentrated on training with Orn, and one training session lasted for an entire day. His control of the dragon's soul world had reached an extremely proficient level. With the power of destiny, he could calmly guide the dragon's soul. It was far faster and easier to imprint than any Dragon Knight's training. Up until now, the Sunfire Dragon no longer needed to train frequently, and the Invisible Dragon Bard no longer needed to train. After all, these two dragons had already graduated and completed the soul imprint. Only the Mountain Copper Dragon Marta, the Aluminum Dragon Connor, and the Water Dragon Wouter had not made much progress. Therefore, he spent most of the month with Orn, and the rest of the time was allocated to official duties. He presided over the transformation of the Fire Kingdom from a grassroots government to a real kingdom. He set down various legal systems such as tax, justice, etiquette, and so on. But it was only limited to the Fire Island, and he built a family-style fiefdom. He was already a powerhouse at the top of the world, and he didn't have such a big demand for centralized power. As the soul of a modern civilization on Earth, he was very clear that there was no country that could prosper forever. However, a family could last for thousands of years, so it was enough for the Fire family to last forever. During his reign, it didn't matter if it was centralized power or knight feudalism. Would his followers dare to disobey his orders? It was already March. List went to a cheese mage tower for a walk. This mage tower had just been built, and it was located in the valley behind the Palace of Stars, Moon, and Palace of Stars. Originally, a Chi could have directly experimented in the Palace of Stars, Sun, and Moon, but because of an explosion, many rooms in the Palace of Stars were destroyed, and several servants were killed. Therefore, a Chi moved the laboratory out of the Palace of Stars and built it in the back of the mountain. An explosion here would at most kill a magician. As for a Chi herself, as the strongest magic shooter in history, even a dragon knight could not kill her, so a mere explosion was not even worth mentioning. Big brother, we've finished studying the connection between the golden apple tree and the bloodline fruit. Through the activation of the magic array, we can release the power of the golden apple tree and infect the surrounding plants to form the bloodline fruit. If this golden apple tree is fully activated, it can produce over 100 bloodline fruits. Chi reported the results of her latest experiment. Back when he discovered the natural node on Wudong Island, the natural node was located in a large swamp. List named it Dreamy Cloud Swamp. 6 bloodline fruits grew on a piece of land in the Dreamy Cloud Swampland. Eventually, he dug out a piece of golden apple wood. Chi had only recently found the time to study this piece of golden apple wood. Then let's hand it over to the Royal Arcane Academy as soon as possible and form a development team to cultivate it. Liz said to Chris, who was following behind him. Also, contact the cabinet and select suitable livestock in World of Warcraft as soon as possible. When the bloodline fruit ripens, immediately feed them and evolve them. Like magic potions, World of Warcraft meat was always scarce. It was impossible to feed so many knights with the little World of Warcraft meat that they hunted. All the big nobles would collect bloodline fruits and try to evolve their livestock in a World of Warcraft meat. The low-level World of Warcraft meat that relied on bloodline fruits to evolve might be seriously lacking in strength, but its nutritional value would be greatly increased. Most importantly, it was easy to raise. List also needed a large amount of World of Warcraft meat to provide nutrition for his knight. However, he had something better than World of Warcraft meat, dragon meat. Black blood horses, Bampo cattle, and estuary boars were the first 3 types of dragon meat. Nowadays, Bampo cattle have been mass-produced on the grasslands of Flame Island, and the milk they produced was specially for big nobles and talented young knights. Estuary boars had also become an indispensable food for the Burning Legion. In addition, with the Invisible Dragon Bard's climax every year, it had already provided a total of 17 space gems for List, accompanied by 6 new types of dragon meat: dragonhead fish, long-necked goose, hairy sheep, treehorn deer, big-eared elephant, and grass mud horse. Dragonhead fish were ordinary grass carps that had withstood the magic power of the dragon's bloodline and evolved. They had strong reproductive ability and high nutrition. The largest of them could grow up to 3 meters. They were simply the giants of freshwater. Long-necked goose were ordinary geese that had withstood the magic power of the dragon's bloodline and evolved. They grew to the size of a pony, and their combat power was comparable to that of a low-level World of Warcraft. Long-necked goose was full of nutrition, especially its goose eggs, which were large and plentiful. After being marinated, they were delicious. Hairy sheep were ordinary goats that had not yet expanded their population. However, their wool was very dense and grew a lot, which made the wool cloth very comfortable. Treehorn deer were ordinary reindeer that had evolved. Their antlers were like trees, which were very nutritious. Big-eared elephant were ordinary elephants that had just evolved. Their population had not yet expanded, and they only found that their strength had increased. Grass mud horse were ordinary alpacas that had just evolved. Their population had not yet expanded. Alpacas were livestock that used both meat and fur. Grass mud horses should be able to use their fur and meat to a higher value. Bard alone had brought a large number of dragon meat beasts to list, and there would definitely be more in the future. Unfortunately, the other dragons had not yet figured out how to achieve climax and release the magic power of the dragon's bloodline. Some dragons might not even achieve climax once in their lives. Your Majesty, please rest assured. Chris will complete the cultivation of the bloodline fruit as soon as possible. Chris Truth, the first Arcana Minister and the Dean of the Royal Magic Academy, nodded and replied. List no longer asked about this aspect of the content. Instead, he asked Chi, "What's your next research topic?" "Brother, didn't you say that you have a new dragon to tame?" So, Chi plans to study the emerald dragon's hind legs and try to figure out the cultivation method of the mind fruit tree, so that I can hoard more mind fruit trees for brother. Well, then I'll wait for your good news. Leaving the Mage Tower, List went to the dragon pit mine again, ready to seize the time to train with Orn and strive to conquer the personal ninth dragon. However, when he rode the invisible dragon bar to the dragon pit mine, he suddenly felt a mysterious wave. It's the feedback of the power of fate. He raised his eyebrows and had already captured the source of the wave. It seems that there's a big elf around waiting for me to pick. Just like the reminder of every smoke mission, he could now clearly grasp what the power of fate was guiding. At this moment, it was a big elf. Nine Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1084. Following his feeling, List rode on the gray iron dragon, Orn, and headed towards the source of the threads of fate. This feeling was extremely mysterious, but exceptionally clear. After receiving the blessing of fate, this is the first time I have such a strong feeling towards the threads of fate. It seems that it's because the object of the feeling is a great elf that it's so clear. On the contrary, the threads of fate around me, no matter if it's something small or related to dragons, are not as strong. He was calculating. The threads of fate related to dragons were not strong enough because there were too many accidents that could happen. Although the threads of fate of other small things would not have too many accidents because he did not pay much attention to them, the power of the threads was not strong enough. No matter what, the power of fate definitely had to be explored step by step. He did not know how long it would take for the smoke dragon to be born. During this period of time, he could only control the power of fate by himself. Unknowingly, he and Orn had already flown from the Dragon Pit territory to the neighboring Amazon territory. The Amazon territory was located west of the Dragon Pit territory and north of the King's territory. It was adjacent to the saltwater sea, the fief of the mermaid, Duke Blaboxy. This place had a typical tropical rainforest climate, with dense vegetation and crisscrossing rivers. However, because of this, the development difficulty was extremely high. Only the location of the territory and the main city had been planned. Orders of chivalry had incorporated the Moonkiller tribes here a few times. However, there should still be many Moonkiller tribes hiding here, playing hide-and-seek with Orders of chivalry. Relying on the tall trees as a cover, it was difficult to wipe out the Moonkiller tribes. There are even many night tribes that died here. To completely incorporate them, they would have to burn down the entire forest. However, the humidity in this forest was very high, and it was not easy to ignite a large area of fire. At this moment, List was hovering in the sky above the area that he named the Amazon rainforest. The threads of fate were indeed strong, but he could not pinpoint the exact location of the great elf. He had to find it himself. At the same time, he was using this opportunity to find the great elf to explore the use of the power of fate. Every action would trigger the threads of fate to a different extent. When he chose the appropriate action and triggered the threads of fate, he would be able to achieve his desired goal. It's a pity that Orn and I are unable to cooperate with the Magic Eye. Only the Fire Dragon, Water Dragon, and formless dragon can operate the magic eye to form a special and powerful vision. After he and Aun became one, Aun's vision was just a simple dragon's vision, and his vision was just clearer. Unable to observe the light of mana retroaction, he had to personally use the magic eyes with his naked eyes to observe. Fortunately, he now had supreme demonic dragon chi, and the effect of the magic eye was greatly enhanced. He could barely see the magic of the entire Amazon rainforest. There's too much light from the mana retroaction, but it's blocked by the trees, so I can't see it clearly. I can basically tell that most of it is the light of World of Warcraft. Also, my observation of the rainforest isn't pulling on the threads of fate, and it's going against the Grand Elf's fate. Therefore, he adjusted his plan and no longer focused on observing the rainforest. Instead, he focused on looking down from the sky. Following that, he made a few more adjustments, but he didn't sense any fate approaching that of a Grand Elf, until he turned his gaze to the densely packed rivers and lakes in the Amazon rainforest. At this moment, he clearly felt that he was getting closer to the fate of that Grand Elf, or it could be said that the threads of fate that were connected to that Grand Elf were being pulled more violently. So, this is an aquatic Grand Elf? His gaze fell on a lake below. This lake was huge and connected to the main river in the rainforest. On the surface of the lake, a small part was covered by green plants, especially the huge round leaves, which were densely packed together. Aun, let's go to the lake. Roar. One man and one dragon landed by the lake. List approached the huge round leaves on the surface of the lake and carefully observed this plant. In his senses, the threads of fate were connected to this plant. Such a huge leaf, one piece is about the size of a house, like a lotus, but soon he shook his head. No, it's not like a lotus, it should be like a water lily. Only the leaves of a water lily float on the surface of the water. List had seen lotus flowers and water lilies in parks on Earth before. These two plants were very similar, and many people easily confused them. But the leaves of a water lily floated on the surface of the water, while the leaves of a lotus grew out of the surface of the water and did not stick to the surface of the water. Actually, it's not like a water lily. The leaves of this plant are not only big, but also not flat. The edges are curled up, just like a bathtub. One plant has about 17 or 18 leaves, and the leaves at the edge have completely spread out. The leaf in the middle is like a triangle, and it's not big. A mature leaf was the size of a house, and all the leaves of the entire plant added together was equivalent to a giant. It was a gigantic water lily, yet it was so domineering. List immediately named this new plant Monarch Lotus. Let's call it Monarch Lotus. The Grand Elf I'm looking for is likely a Monarch Lotus Grand Elf. Unfortunately, the Monarch Lotus does not have the light of mana retroaction. It's not a magic potion, and it doesn't seem to have any economic value. He lightly jumped onto a leaf of the Monarch Lotus and stood steadily on it, but there were faint signs of the leaf being trampled. This kind of leaf could not be used as a boat to glide. Among the 17 or 18 leaves, a flower and a few flower buds emerged from the surface of the water. Beside the flower bud, there was a black thing, which was probably the fruit. List directly walked over and plucked the fruit, which was about the size of a person's arms. Then, he jumped onto the shore. Orn turned his head to take a look, and then he was indifferent. List peeled the fruit, and the sturdy outer skin easily broke under his powerful strength. Then, he revealed the corn-like grains inside. There were about a few hundred of them. Of course, they only looked like corn, but in fact, each grain was the size of a child's fist. His body was already immune to all poisons, and his battle energy was enough to dissolve everything. He directly peeled off a corn grain and took a light bite. Immediately, his eyes lit up. The taste is very fragrant, just like eating a pineapple. The fragrance lingers in the mouth, and the juice is plentiful. The seeds of the Monarch Lotus can be eaten as a fruit, and it's a very delicious fruit. This was good news. However, such a large Monarch Lotus only produced a few seeds, and its value was not high enough. No matter what, I have to find Great Elf Wang Lian first. He kept the seed into the space ring and mounted the gray-mouthed iron dragon on. Following the rivers and lakes, he started a search for new monarch lotuses. Finally, on a wide river, he saw the light of mana retroaction that he wanted to see. It was a giant king lotus floating on the water. The leaves were huge, and there were many of them. A single monarch lotus occupied half of the river, emitting chaotic colors of mana retroaction. On one of the leaves of the monarch lotus, there was a small elf lying on it, happily basking in the sun and sleeping soundly. Roar! Orn, who was connected to List's mind as one, let out a mischievous roar and rapidly released his fierce dragon aura. The overwhelming dragon's might and the deafening roar scared the sleeping Wang Lian out of her wits, causing her to fall into the river through the gaps between the leaves. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperors. Chapter 1085. Wang Lian, who had fallen into the river, was unable to run away. List, who had the mermaid's heart contract, could easily catch her in the water as if he was walking on flat ground. He then jumped back onto a leaf of the monarch lotus worm grass. He carefully examined Wang Lian in his hand. Although this great elf lived on the surface of water, it was not a water elf. Or rather, although monarch lotus grew in lakes and rivers, it was not a marine plant. Therefore, Wang Lian was still a terrestrial elf. It had no gills and had a pair of transparent wings on its back. On its head were 2 small monarch lotus leaves that hung on either side of its head. It was as if it had split its hair into 2 halves. It was cute and slightly comical. Its body was a crystalline pale white. This was the body color of most elves, nothing too special. It had large black eyes and exquisite facial features. It was very beautiful, but at this moment, Wang Lian's expression was fierce. It shouted angrily, "Achi!" It was unknown what it meant. "Stop shouting, little fellow. You and I are fated." Liz stroked the leaf on Wang Lian's head. He was not in a hurry to form a contract. He was feeling the power of fate. As a person favored by fate who had fused with the smoke dragon, he had been constantly adapting and trying to control the power of fate. But the power of fate was an illusory existence. It could not be touched or seen and could only be vaguely felt. It was very difficult to master it. After all, he was not the real smoke dragon. The smoke dragon had only been born in his mind. I started feeling Wang Lian's threads of fate near the dragon pit mine. Then, I searched all the way here. This process is considered to be stirring the threads of fate, or rather, controlling fate. After I captured Great Elf Wang Lian, this thread of fate came to an abrupt end. Suddenly stopping did not mean that the thread had broken, but that the thread had disappeared. Or rather, the power of fate that connected Wang Lian to List had suddenly disappeared. What a strange phenomenon. I still can't understand it. List fell for a long time, but still could not figure out the power of fate. Wang Lian, who was in his hand, had been shouting "Ah Chi" for 15 minutes. Her voice was hoarse. Seeing that shouting didn't work, she hung lazily in List's hand, squinting her eyes as if she was basking in the sun. Since she couldn't resist, she might as well enjoy it. What a cute big elf. Come on, bite me. List snapped out of his reverie. He tightened the skin on his index finger and stuffed it into Wang Lian's mouth. Without waiting for Wang Lian to react, he tapped the tip of his index finger against her teeth. Immediately, her skin ruptured and a drop of blood was squeezed out, mixing with Wang Lian's teeth. A miraculous connection was instantly established, and he and Wang Lian could already communicate on the spiritual level. He could feel that Wang Lian's heart was very calm. She simply wanted to bask in the sun and sleep. Perhaps everything would return to how it was before after a nap. There was no giant lizard with a thunderous voice, and there was no detestable bastard grabbing his neck. The sudden spiritual contract with List interrupted Wang Lian's pure heart, causing her to open her eyes in confusion. "Achi, what name do you think I should give you?" List and Wang Lian looked at each other, thinking seriously. "You are an elf that lives in the river. Actually, the name King of the River, Tam, suits you the best, but I gave a name Tam to a giant kelp elf. The giant kelp elf was Parker, and the giant kelp elves were Fitz, Tam, and Eddie. Since he had given the name to the giant kelp elf, List definitely couldn't take it back. But he quickly had a flash of inspiration. I remember that the full name of the king of the river is Tam Kinch. Since Tam has already been given to the giant kelp elf, I'll give Kinch to you. And so, while Wang Lian was in a daze and couldn't understand the situation in front of her, she already had a new name, Kinch. Kinch became List's 30th great elf, and was also one of the few great elves that List had named himself. He didn't bother to name the great elves that came from the Gray Iron family and the Earth Tyrant family, and just used their previous names. There were only 12 great elves that List had named himself. Kelp Grand Elf Parker, Pea Grand Elf Ash, Thorn Grand Elf Ella, Mangrove Grand Elf Nami, Potato Grand Elf Kutch, Banana Grand Elf Bobby, Corn Grand Elf Tick, Corn Grand Elf Mickey, Giant Konjac Grand Elf Carl, Calabash Grand Elf Cree, Coffee Grand Elf Mundo, and Wong Lotus Grand Elf Kenji. Of the remaining 18, 7 came from the Gray Iron family: oats, barley, apple, tomato, pea, white crystal chrysanthemum, and ice grass elf. 11 came from the Earth Tyrant family: stonewood, tobacco, black tea, barley, corn, iris, glutinous rice, ginger, beet, and 2 wheat elves. Kinch snapped out of his daze and asked. He felt enmity towards List, but he also felt close to him. He was very conflicted. Remember, Kinch, you are my great elf from now on. List wasn't in a hurry to explain. Instead, he carried Kinch and leaped onto the back of the gray Iron Dragonorn. Now let's go inspect the area where the Wang Lian grows and see if there are any potion species. Wang Lian was a plant unique to the Amazon rainforest. As long as he searched along the river and lake, he would be able to find traces of Wang Lian. But after half an hour, he had already scanned a large area, but he still didn't find any Wang Lian with mana retroaction, nor did he find any new worm stalks or elves. Seems like there really aren't any. There's a mana retroaction glow on the lake's surface. List was instantly delighted, and he urged Orn to dive down. When he landed on the lake surface, he could clearly see that there was a small patch of Wang Lian with light blue magical light floating on the lake surface. Among them, there was even a Wang Lian with chaotic magical light. Great! There's a monarch lotus cordyceps, and there are quite a few monarch lotuses growing around it. Soon, he found the Wang Lian sprite worm hiding under a leaf. It was a chubby light green sprite worm. Ordinary sprite worms could no longer enter List's eyes, but this sprite worm with its own potion made List very excited. The reason was none other than the fact that with the Wang Lian, Kinch's value would immediately soar. Achi! Kinch felt List's excitement and became more and more puzzled. Kinch, it's time for you to show off your skills. In the future, plant the Wang Lian in the area under the influence of your worm stalks. The Wang Lian has a high requirement for the environment, so I'm afraid it can only be planted here. It will be difficult for my serfs to farm here for the time being. But it doesn't matter, I still have ugly fish. He quickly contacted the saltwater sea duke Burbosi and had Burbosi command ugly fish to stay in the Amazon territory and be responsible for planting the Wang Lian. At the same time, he dug out a Wang Lian and sent it to the Wizard Tower, handing it over to the potion arcanist to refine into a potion and analyze its value. Kinch, who had been brought around by List all along the way, was in a daze. Achi! Chapter 1086. The Monarch Lotus was a gigantic plant with water attribute magic power. The concentration of magic power was not low, and one should be able to refine more than 10 potions. For an arcanist who specialized in refining potions, this task could be completed in half a day. List tried the completed potion himself. Although he was a fire attribute warrior, it did not hinder him from judging the quality of other potions. However, after drinking it, the impact of the potion was very weak. He then frowned. This is not right. The impact of magic power is not as strong as that of a normal potion. Potions were defined by the Royal Arcana Academy, Guild of Magic into 6 levels: normal potion, special potion, strong potion, auxiliary potion, and dragon potion. The normal potion was the most common chaos attribute potion. The Monarch Lotus should at least be a normal potion. He did not expect it to be so low. Dean Chris also tried a Monarch Lotus potion. Whenever List came to the Royal Arcana Academy, Chris would be the one to receive him. Your Majesty, the Monarch Lotus potion is too weak. Of all the normal potions I've seen, this is probably the worst. Test it a few more times to see if it has any potential as an auxiliary potion. Yes. Chris then arranged for a special knight to come and help with the test. Unfortunately, the Monarch Lotus potion did not have any properties as an auxiliary potion. Now, there's only one possibility left: whether the Monarch Lotus potion has potential as a dragon potion. We can only leave it to you, Your Majesty, to test it yourself. Okay. List nodded. He took 2 Monarch Lotus potions and directly summoned the invisible dragon bard. Yeah, come, Bard, let's go to the Mermaid City. When they arrived at the Mermaid City, List summoned the little water dragon Wouter and threw a Monarch Lotus potion to him. Try it and see if it has any effect on you. Yo-ho! Wouter directly crushed the potion bottle with his throat and swallowed the Monarch Lotus potion. As soon as magic power spread, he suddenly widened his dragon eyes and let out a joyful cheer. He sent a message to List using the Dragon Heart code. This thing is strong. List, I want more. List, who did not have much hope, was very surprised. He casually tossed the Second King Lotus potion to Walter, then turned around and rode on Walter's Dragon Tooth platform. With the heart and soul connection, he instantly understood the magic enhancement effect of the King Lotus potion on the water dragon. It can't compare to the enhancement effect of the fire dragon water on the fire dragon, but the difference isn't too big. It can be called a dragon potion. This was truly a pleasant surprise. He had only hoped that the Monarch Lotus potion could become a high-quality single common potion to make up for the Fire Kingdom's huge demand for potions. He never expected the Monarch Lotus potion to become a dragon potion in one go. However, after all, he had been through too many big scenes. After a brief moment of surprise, he calmed down. The potion extracted from the Phoenix Parasol tree is very helpful to fire dragons, but the effect on other dragons is average. It's named Fire Dragon Potion. The potion extracted from the Monarch Lotus is very helpful to water dragons. I wonder if it's helpful to other dragons? If it was helpful, it could be called Blue Dragon Water or something like that. If it wasn't helpful, it could only be called Water Dragon Water. Yo-ho! Walter was still clamoring to take the potion. Don't be impatient. This is a newly discovered potion extracted from the Monarch Lotus. The Monarch Lotus hasn't been planted on a large scale yet. If you want it, you'll have to wait for at least half a year. He had already instructed Wuxia to order the clowns to plant the Monarch Lotus. However, even with the influence of the Great Sprite's worm stalk, the Monarch Lotus still needed time to grow. Yo-ho! Walter expressed his understanding, but requested that once the Monarch Lotus matured, all of it would be given to him. He would not allow anyone else or dragons to touch it. Don't worry, List replied casually and sent the little water dragon away. He then quickly rode the invisible dragon bard to the Amazon rainforest. Only 2 days had passed, but clowns had already arrived in the Amazon rainforest one after another. Wuxia had also personally followed the river and rushed to the Amazon territory to plan the Monarch Lotus plantation. The Monarch Lotus had to live in fresh water. Therefore, in order to plant as much as possible, he needed to plan a wide, crisscrossing body of water in the Amazon rainforest. It was tentatively set at a scale of 10,000 acres. The area of influence of the Great Sprite's worm stalk was usually between 4,800 acres to 7,200 acres. The area beyond that was reserved for cultivating new Monarch Lotus fairies. Riding on the back of the invisible dragon, one could see densely packed clowns combing the river and digging the lake. These were clowns with high intelligence. As the source of vitality potion improved their fertility, their population increased exponentially. Adult clowns could be seen everywhere with little clowns on their backs. The clowns did not live in a family unit, but their mothers would take care of them until they could live independently. Your Majesty, are you here to supervise the construction? This is only a small project of 10,000 acres of magic medicine field. Wuxia stood in the river. The water level only reached her waist. Every mermaid was very beautiful, but their bodies were too huge. They could only be seen from afar and not played with. List jumped on Wuxia's shoulder. He pointed at the busy clowns and smiled. This is not just 10,000 acres of magic medicine field. The potions refined from the monarch lotus have already been confirmed to have the value of dragon medicine. These 10,000 acres of monarch lotus will produce an endless supply of dragon medicine to feed my dragons. Of course, I still have to dig up a monarch lotus to test if it is effective on other dragons. Wuxia sighed in admiration. Your brilliance makes me unable to look straight at you. The value of dragon medicine is enormous. The 3 human kingdoms only have one kind of red dragon water, and you already have a second. My luck has always been good. Yes, right. How is the research on the mermaid's source of vitality in the Royal Arcane Academy? List asked. After solving the problem of the clown's reproduction, the Arcanist had been researching the problem of the mermaid's reproduction. However, the mermaids reproduced asexually, so it was more complicated to solve. Wuxia sighed. I have already donated all my earnings to the Source of Vitality Laboratory, but there has been no good news so far. Don't worry, you still have a long life. 10 years is not enough for 20 years, and 20 years is not enough for 100 years. I believe that one day, the mermaids will regain their fertility. Your Majesty's glory, I hope that such a day will come. There will be. You continue to command. I'm very busy, so I'll go back first. He said a few words, then hurriedly plucked a monarch lotus and left the Amazon rainforest. The monarch lotus magic potion was only an interlude for this period of time. The most important thing was to train with the gray-mouthed iron dragon Aon, and quickly stir the threads of fate of the unknown new dragon. A new monarch lotus magic potion was quickly refined into a magic potion, so he directly stuffed 2 magic potions into Bard and Aon's hands. Bard finished the potion and had no experience at all. Aon finished the potion and also had no experience at all. Unfortunately, this magic potion is only effective on water dragons. Sigh, it is only water dragon water, not blue dragon water. List shook his head. Actually, he was not very disappointed. In fact, just the water dragon water was enough to make him overjoyed. This was an unexpected surprise. The monarch lotus plantation was in full swing, and the water dragon water was listed as a special dragon medicine for the little water dragon. After finishing this interlude, List carefully sensed the threads of fate around him. There were no threads worth making a move on, so he calmed down and continued to crazily train with Aon. Time flew by. It was already the end of April. The figure of the night in Aon's spiritual world became clearer and clearer, and he was not far from successfully branding his spiritual imprint. At this moment, List's heart suddenly moved, and a mysterious feeling attacked him. That was the power of fate. At the same time, a thread of fate that was originally dim was stirred violently, and he could not ignore it. He focused a little. Then he sensed the source of this thread of fate. Xianxia, Marquis of Great West, is back? Chapter 1087. Xianxia, the Marquis of Great West, was the oldest of the mermaids. Before the mermaids finished their sea voyage, she had brought the sea sprites back to the Fire Kingdom in advance. Your Majesty, I'm sorry for the delay. I've delayed your plans for the development of the sea in the Fire Kingdom. After seeing List in the Mermaid City, she immediately expressed her apologies. Obviously, she knew that List was not satisfied with the mermaid's absence for such a long time. One would not slap a smiling person. Moreover, mermaids were not knights. List did not choose to criticize the mermaids for strictly following the knight system and becoming loyal followers, so he nodded and said, It's been a hard journey. Marquis Xianxia. How are the other mermaids? Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. They are living well in the sea. There are countless treasures in the sea that attract them. But they will soon finish mapping the coastline of the legendary continent, and then return to the Fire Kingdom to help Your Majesty develop the sea. We have never forgotten to purify the Devil's Sea. The purification of the Devil's Sea must be carried out. When the time is right, I will personally preside over it. List was also curious about the Malfa continent on the other side of the Devil's Sea. But rice must be eaten one bite at a time. He asked, "What about the sea sprites you brought back?" "They are all here." Following Atenia's call, a large number of sprites came. Most of them were sprite worms. There were a dozen lesser sprites and 2 greater sprites. These sprites had already been contracted with Xianxia. List did not intend to contract aquatic sprites. It was more convenient to let the mermaids contract them. "What kind of sprites are they?" "This is a kelp sprite. I named it Shakalaka. This is a sea pine sprite. I named it Aristotle. This lesser sprite is..." Xianxia introduced the aquatic sprites one by one. The kelp sprite and the sea pine sprite had names, but the others did not. Judging from the tone of her introduction, she had no liking for sprites and treated them as tools. After all, a long time ago, the Sea Kingdom would capture sprite worms and trade them with humans. In their view, sprites were like fishes and shrimps. Of course, during the era when mermaids ruled the Sea Kingdom, the elves only had sprite worms. Lesser sprites, greater sprites, and dragon sprites had yet to be born. Stupid sprite worms were indeed no different from fishes and shrimps. Well, you have to take good care of these sprites, especially the kelp great sprite. It can grow kelp, a valuable seafood. It just so happened that Bruno Bossi had been very busy recently. She had to develop the saltwater sea while helping me manage the Amazon rainforest. If you come back, you can take over the Amazon rainforest. As you wish. Xianxia was easy to talk to. When you've accumulated enough battle merits, I'll confer you the title of Duke of Great Western and divide a sea as your fief, List said. "Thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. I will manage the Amazon rainforest well." After the official business was done, List began to ask Xianxia about her special experiences during the cruise. Although they had the connection of the Devil Foundation, there were many things that couldn't be explained in detail through the Devil Foundation. The sea is far lonelier than the sea of the Moon Empire era. Your Majesty, the era I lived in was probably at the end of the Moon Empire era, even many years after the Moon Empire disappeared. At that time, the pollution of the cursed dragon had already shrouded the sea, but it was still more lively than the sea now. Xianxia continued with emotion. In our era, the sea not only had a large number of intelligent marine races, such as mermaids, nagas, clowns, sirens, and so on. There were also countless sea monsters, and even the sea giant Leviathan was not rare. However, during this voyage, all I saw was desolation. Without the intelligent marine races, mermaids, nagas, and clowns had completely disappeared. Even the remains of the palaces of the former Sea Kingdom were not found. Sea monsters that roamed the sea were also rare. The only magical creature found was the flood dragon, the Hydra. We organized several collective hunts, but the Hydra escaped. The location of the Hydra is probably in this sea. She pointed to a map of the legendary continent that was gradually outlined, her fingertips pointing to the sea north of the continent. This sea was located in the coastal area of the noble Frost Empire. When I have time, I will take action with a chi and capture this Hydra. It is reasonable to say that the flood dragon has extraordinary intelligence. Maybe it can tame the Hydra as a guardian beast, just like taming the giant lion Nemea. List was very envious of this Hydra. He was envious of all magical things. Your Majesty, I also met a siren in the sea of the Unsetting Light Empire. She used to live on land. According to her conversation, the language of the Unsetting Light Empire was a high-level, clear text, similar to the grammatical structure of the Moon language. It was far closer to the Moon language than the Wind language and the Snake language. No matter how close it is not the Moon language. The only one that inherited the civilization of the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire is the Fire Kingdom. List chuckled. What else did you communicate with that siren? I asked her if she was willing to come to the Fire Kingdom. She said she was not willing. Although sirens were rare in the sea, Chi was not the only one. In the past, List had seen the old siren, Izzy. However, Izzy's magic talent was poor. In the historical records, there were no records of sirens having magic talent. From this point of view, Chi was unique. However, sirens were really beautiful. Did you talk about the situation of the Unsetting Light Empire with the siren? Sorry, I am not interested in the Unsetting Light Empire, so do not talk about it. And after all, there's a gap in our language, so I stumbled and did not have a pleasant conversation. Compared to His Excellency Achilles, that siren is too ignorant and too childish. The return of Etnia was undoubtedly a great help to the marine industry. The number of clowns was increasing, and it was impossible to rely on a mermaid like Blue Boshi to completely control them. So List continued to crazily train with the gray-mouthed iron dragon, Orn. Just like that, time flew into the future without stopping. At the same time, the Royal Arcane Academy on Flame Island and the various laboratories affiliated to the Academy were constantly launching magical technology products. Most of them were inventions related to the people's livelihood. The Arcanist system had steadily moved towards the scholar route that List had conceived. Mages no longer prioritized learning powerful magic. After the name change, the primary goal of the Arcanists was to concentrate on researching all kinds of magical technology and inventions. In this context, the Royal Shipyard in the Whirlpool Estuary City, as well as the Ship Laboratory jointly invested by the Royal Shipyard and the Royal Arcane Academy. The chief arcanist of the laboratory, Inuit Truth, announced that the era of sailing ships was about to become a thing of the past. The magic ship was officially born. Chapter 1088. When List first came to this world, the Sapphire Duchy was at the forefront of navigation technology, reaching the era of horizontal sailing. Later, List introduced vertical sails, and hybrid sailboats became the main force of the Fire Kingdom. The entire Fire Archipelago used hybrid sailboats for navigation trade, as well as for every war. Even fishing boats used a combination of horizontal sails and vertical sails. However, hybrid sailboats, no matter how advanced, could not jump out of the limitations of sailboats and must be driven by wind. Therefore, he had been asking the Arcanists of the Royal Arcane Academy to research a steam engine that could be driven by boiling water. However, the steam engine involved the structure of many mechanical parts, which could not be completed overnight. Moreover, the Arcanists here were not sensitive to pure mechanical creations. Therefore, the steam engine was difficult to produce. Even if a few models were made, they looked like toys. Even if List told the Arcanist that the power of boiling water was infinite, the Arcanist would not understand. No matter how powerful the power of boiling water was, could it be as powerful as the power of magic? Could it be as powerful as the power of dragons? Inuit Truth, the Arcanist who was once named by the Smoke Mission, was the first to develop a new generation of hybrid sailboats by combining horizontal sails and vertical sails. His attitude towards the steam engine was no different from that of the general Arcanists, and he also trusted magic more. Therefore, he did not develop steamships, but based on the ideas suggested by List, he studied another kind of ship, the magic ship. Before him, there was Gundalf Truth, who invented the magic bicycle and appeared on the cover of Great Arcanist. Inspired, Inuit began to combine magic with ships. In the continuous experiments in the ship laboratory, he finally combined the magic array with the propeller and completed the research and development of the first magic ship. It is worth mentioning that the structure of the propeller was taught by List. All my research results were realized under the unparalleled and wise guidance of His Majesty the King. It was His Majesty the King who commissioned me to design ships and told me that ships should get rid of oars and sails and use propellers to propel them, that I was able to design the magic ship. When Inuit was interviewed on the cover of Great Arcanist, he spent a whole page complimenting His Majesty List for his help in the research and development of the magic ship. He even named the thruster Flame Thruster to curry favor. The so-called propeller was just an ordinary propeller that was powered by a magic array. The propeller was used to propel the flow of water, and so the magic ship was born. The standard speed of the magic ship can reach 70 knots, which is several times faster than the current fastest Iron Dragon warship, which is 20 knots. In theory, magic ships can increase the speed of their propellers infinitely. 70 knots is just a speed that saves on magic power consumption. If you don't care about magic power consumption and the hull is sturdy enough, you can reach 700 knots. Inuit boasted about the magic ship in high spirits. In the era of hover sail, the fastest palace sailing ship in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire could only sail at 10 knots, a little over 18 kilometers per hour. In the era of hybrid-powered sailboats, the fastest Iron Dragon warship in the Fire Kingdom could reach a speed of 20 knots, which was a little more than 37 kilometers per hour. Now that the magic ship had reached a speed of 70 knots, it could travel at a speed of 130 kilometers per hour. Moreover, this speed would not be affected by the wind. Even if the wind was strong and against the wind, it would still be able to reach more than 100 kilometers per hour. In the summary of the interview of Great Arcanist, Inuit and his invention of the magic ship were described as follows. With the invention of the magic ship by the chief arcanist Inuit Truth, the prelude of the age of great navigation has slowly begun. It is conceivable that in the future, humans will sail the magic ship on the sea as freely as a knight riding a horse on the continent. There was a suspicion of excessive boasting. In fact, with the opening of the magic transmission circle, the age of great navigation had become less important. The communication between the Fire Kingdom and the legendary continent basically did not need to be completed by sea. However, the invention of the magic ship was still very important. It meant that the development of the sea had rapidly risen to a new level. For this reason, List personally returned from the Dragon Pit Mine and received Inuit and his ship Laboratory Arcanist team in the Palace of Stars, Sun, Moon, and Stars. He talked to Inuit in a very friendly manner. Inuit, the magic ship has been freed from the limitation of sails. Maybe it can be made bigger. A ship can carry 1 orders of chivalry, or even a dragon. Your next research direction can be in this direction. I need to transport the knight and the dragon by sea. As you wish, Your Majesty, I will seriously think about how to strengthen the magic ship. Very good. List was very happy. Of course, he did not really need to use the magic ship to transport the knight to conquer the legendary continent. It was not efficient enough. Building a magic transmission circle to conquer the legendary continent quickly was the way to go. However, he thought of another continent, the Malfa continent. It was difficult to find a natural node that led directly to the Malfa continent through the magic transmission circle. Therefore, if he wanted to explore the Malfa continent, he still had to cross the Devil's Sea. If it was him, he could just follow Chi and the mermaids and swim together. However, not only did he want to go by himself, but he also wanted to lead an army there. He had to build some dragon carrier that could transport the dragon. After all, he did not know the situation of the Malfa continent. If he wanted to go there, he would have to send an army. Only a strong dragon could cross the river. The magic ship caused a lot of excitement in the Fire Kingdom, but it was only a few days of enthusiasm. The magic transmission circle between Jade City and Realgar City had already made the Fire Kingdom a kingdom on land. The age of great navigation was not among the goals of many nobles. For the nobles of the kingdom, the way to explore the sea was to plunder the legendary continent. After the enthusiasm subsided, they quickly forgot about the magic ship. Regarding this, List could only say, how could a sparrow and a swallow know the ambition of a great swan? Of course, he did not need the short-sighted nobles to understand his great goal. He had already returned to the Dragon Pit Mine and continued to train with the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Orn. However, very quickly, a flickering thread of fate attracted him. Following the thread, He felt the source of the thread of fate, the great P-elf, AI, she. After carefully analyzing it, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and could not help but laugh out loud. Haha, great news. AI, she actually evolved successfully. After subduing the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orn 2 years ago, AI, she quickly fell in love with this dragon. It took a long time for a great elf to evolve into a dragon elf. Some great elves could even like a dragon for more than 10 years. Not every great elf could evolve successfully in such a short time, like the Phoenix tree great elf. Therefore, AI, she only completed her evolution after waiting for more than 2 years. He hurriedly returned to the Palace of Stars and Sunday. As soon as he entered the palace that belonged to AI, he saw a beautiful, tall, and straight dragon elf. She was naked and holding a piece of rope in her hand. After seeing List, AI, who had just grown into a pea-dragon elf, revealed a sweet smile. List, I evolved, and I feel that my rope skills have also improved. Do you want to appreciate it? 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1089. Of course, there was no need to appreciate rope art. However, List circled around the pea sprite, or to be precise, the pea dragon sprite. AI, Very excellent. AI, You did not disappoint me. Now you have become the 4th dragon sprite of the Flame family. The pea plantation can be fully cultivated. I thought you liked rope art very much. AI, did not answer the question. Ahem, I am indeed interested in the art of rope art, but I don't have the time. I will arrange for the servants in the palace to cooperate with you and let you carefully display your artistic talent. AI, she shook her head and said disappointedly, Unfortunately, many of those servants are too vulgar and don't understand what my rope art is trying to express. List, I thought you would understand. Only rope art can fully display the curves of beautiful things. You can slowly search among the servants. I believe there will be people who can understand your pursuit of the perfect curve, and you can also spread it among the elves. Perhaps the elves will understand. They won't understand. The pea sprites are just a bunch of fools. Even if they are born as pea sprites, they won't understand. AI, she said very seriously, most elves are fools. Carly, Yachty, and Ainfin are fools as well. And this trait of foolishness is most obvious in Ella. Carly was a man-eating tree dragon elf. Yachty was a buckwheat dragon elf. And Ainfin was a phoenix parasol tree dragon elf. Obviously, AI, she looked down on these 3 dragon elves. As for Ella, most of the elves seemed to look down on Ella. Fortunately, Ella was still pursuing dragons and trying to evolve. After announcing the failure of the aluminum dragon Connor, she began to struggle with the mountain dragon Marta, looking for each other's shining points, hoping to make herself fall in love with the mountain dragon Marta. This allowed the sun, moon, and stars palace to enjoy a period of peace. As long as you understand in your heart, some things don't need to be said. I understand. AI, she sighed. Unfortunately, I can understand you, but very few of you can understand me. Rope art is such a noble art. List, as a king, a top existence among the nobles, you really should learn rope art to dress yourself. After evolving into a dragon elf, AI, she's IQ and eloquence had obviously improved greatly, but her aesthetic sense was still as strange as ever. List decisively ended the conversation. Now that you are a dragon elf, do you need me to prepare a few sets of clothes for you to change into? AI, she lowered her head and thought for a moment before replying. Performing the rope technique naked is the essence of art. However, I still have to face the eyes of the secular world. In that case, customize a few sets of clothes for me. No problem. After leaving Ike's palace, List couldn't help but wipe the sweat off his forehead. Most of the elves under his command had different personalities. Apart from Ella, the most unique one was probably Ike, who was addicted to the art of rope. Ike was once the spirit of the Marquis of P Island, Di Maria Yuhua, sure. Di Maria must be a pervert in private. Ike's interest in rope skills must have been learned from this guy. I have to say, under the sanctimonious appearance of the aristocrats, there is a perverted side. Your Majesty, "Will you be staying in the palace for dinner tonight?" asked the head butler of the internal court, Carter. List shook his head. "Mr. Carter, there is no need to prepare dinner for me. I will leave the palace in a while." The threads of fate related to the new dragon were becoming clearer and clearer. He needed to work harder and not rest. If he did, he might miss this rare opportunity. For him, the Fire Kingdom was a small matter. The dragon was a big deal. Carter hesitated. Seeing this, Liz said, "Mr. Carter, what is the matter?" "It's like this, Your Majesty. You rarely stay in the sun, moon, and stars palace. Her Highness Emily has gone back to the palace to have a meal a few times, but she always seemed unhappy. Her Highness must really want to have a meal with you, Your Majesty." Carter was old and wise, so he naturally understood some of the twists and turns. "Oh, I will find time to invite Emily to eat together," List replied honestly. He did not need to hide his feelings for Emily. This was the Dragon Knight that he had carefully cared for and raised from a young age. Emily, who was 16 years old this year, was already an adult. From a dry little girl in the past, she had grown into a powerful woman with beautiful curves. She was as dazzling as a budding flower. Riding on the gray-mouthed iron dragon, Orn, and leaving the palace, he was still sighing in his heart. "Emily has grown up. It is time for me to fulfill my promise." May had just arrived. The knight figure in the spiritual world of the gray-mouthed iron dragon, Orn, stopped when it was about to reach completion. Very soon, List understood why. "Orn, you have a knot in your heart." "Roar," Orn replied honestly. He did have a knot in his heart. In the past, he was the dragon of the Gray Iron Duchy and was like-minded with the first Gray Iron Grand Duke. The spiritual imprint of the first Gray Iron Grand Duke had already been erased, but that memory was still preserved in his heart. It was this memory that became the stumbling block that prevented List from completing the spiritual imprint. He thought for a while and decided, "Why don't we travel to the ruins of the Gray Iron Duchy and reminisce about your memories of the first Gray Iron Grand Duke? Relax, maybe the knot in your heart will be solved soon." "Roar," or nodded in agreement. Hence, a human and a dragon flew up in the sky and went straight to the Jade Rock Mountain Magic Gate. They passed through the majestic Jade Teleportation Formation and arrived at the majestic Yellow Plains. This was the fief of Yevich Waterpeanut. However, Yevich was still farming in the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. The person in charge of majestic Yellow City was his wife's brother. List didn't know Yevich's wife's brother. He wasn't interested in getting to know him. After passing through the magic gate, he flew away without saying a word. He flew all the way to the northwest, passing through the dense primeval forest. When he was tired, he would land on the top of a mountain to rest. With a magic platform to communicate with the outside world, he could still manage the Fire Kingdom even if he went far away. There was no need for him to stay in the palace all the time. This primeval forest is in urgent need of development. The Eagle Kingdom has no plans to develop it, so it should be taken over by the Fire Kingdom. It's a pity that the population is a big problem. There aren't even enough people to develop Flame Island, let alone this place. After I swallow up the Eagle Kingdom, I'm afraid it will still be very difficult to develop it. Development required population. Without a few generations of continuous reproduction, the population couldn't grow. However, once the population grew, the output of elves wouldn't be able to keep up, which would restrict development. In order to get rid of the restrictions of the elves, it was necessary to vigorously develop magic farming, reviving the era of the ancient Moon Empire. At that time, humans had a bad attitude toward sprite worms, treating them as raw materials for making magic power dust instead of using them for farming. Farming relied entirely on magic. List's vigorous development of the arcane system was also based on the idea of arcanists being able to improve agricultural conditions. Even without elves, agriculture could still flourish. And this point might fall on the research of druid magic. He had always restricted arcanists from researching druid transformation magic, but he encouraged druid planting magic. The magic plant seeds collected from a skyship were all handed over to the arcanists for research. So far, a small part of the magic plants cultivated by the arcanists had already grown lush and verdant, but the problem of slow growth had yet to be solved. Chapter 1090. Under the name of the Royal Arcane Academy, there was a magic laboratory called Natural Source. This laboratory did not follow the Chief Arcanist system, but was similar to the Scientific Research Institute system. The Natural Source Laboratory focused on the development of magic plants and was divided into several research groups: magic beans, magic wheat, magic melons, magic eggplants, magic peppers, magic ginseng, magic lotus, magic orange, magic pear, magic sunflower, transformation tree. Each magic plant had a corresponding research group that specialized in how to grow them. According to the different environmental requirements of different magic plants, the Natural Source Laboratory had branch laboratories in many cities of the Flame Island, and special plantations were planned. Even on the Black Horse Island of the Sapphire Duchy, there was a branch laboratory of the Natural Source Laboratory, where several kinds of magic plants were cultivated in the early stages. However, it had been 4 or 5 years since the cultivation of the magic plants began, and no fruit had been harvested. Magic plants were big trees cultivated by nature magic. Even a legume magic plant like the magic beans would grow into a big tree, like a fruit tree. This process took 10 years to bear fruit. After another 10 years, the output of the magic bean tree would gradually increase until it entered the fruitful period after 40 years. In theory, during the fruitful period of magic beans, a single tree could produce 50,000 caddies of magic beans annually, and a magic bean tree could survive for hundreds of years. It was not known whether the Moon Empire relied on this kind of magic plants to provide food, but at least the Sun Empire of the Malfa continent must have eaten magic plants as food. The mages of the Malfa continent should have developed into druids, which was very different from the mages of the legendary continent. Unfortunately, theory was theory. The growth of the magic beans in the Fire Kingdom was slower than expected, and it seemed that they did not adapt to the environment here. The magic beans cultivated on the Black Horse Island for 4 or 5 years, not to mention growing into a big tree, were just small, crooked saplings. The same was true for other magic plants. When a chief first studied the growth cycle of magic plants, List was disheartened for a time. By the time he counted on magic plants to provide food, he was already 50 or 60 years old. However, when the Fire Kingdom was preparing for the founding of the nation, in order to create a foundation for eternity, coupled with the enthusiasm of the mages for nature magic, he began to vigorously support the research of magic plants again. It was under these conditions that the Natural Source Laboratory was integrated and independent from the Guild of Magic, and recently, it was affiliated to the Royal Arcane Academy. The cultivation of magical plants cannot be done without arcanists. The efficiency of ordinary arcanists is not high, so specialized druids are the most suitable. I wonder if I can find some bloodline of the Sun Child after I open up the Malfa continent and develop them into a specialized farming race. The current clues seem to indicate that the Sun's Child of the Malfa continent seem to have died. Although Phil, the old leathersmith, had been forced to reproduce by the Arcana Masters, allowing the territory to have many descendants of the Sun, it would still take a long time for these descendants to grow up and spread their branches. Leaning on the back of the gray-mouthed iron dragon, List looked at the dense forest and the surroundings and lamented, 10,000 years is too long. I can only seize every minute. He wasn't in a hurry to travel with Orn. According to the memory provided by Orn, it was originally born in the west of the Eagle Kingdom, probably at the border with the Blast Furnace Kingdom. Most of its childhood memories were vague, and it did not know where it came from. However, before it reached adulthood, it met the first Duke of Grey Iron, who was only a marquis, Pyac Milan. Milan was a type of flower. It was worth mentioning that after the fall of the Grey Iron Duchy, Duke Piero changed his surname to Grey Iron. His son, Pyford, brought the family back to the Eagle Kingdom and restored the surname Milan. The first Duke of Grey Iron was far more charismatic than his descendants. He became a perfect Sky Knight at a young age, and then met the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Aon, who was secretly hunting for food. It was like love at first sight between humans and love between humans and dragons. Orn and Pyac fell in love at first sight, and not long after, they completed the Battle of the Soul. There weren't many ups and downs in the story, And there weren't any heroic scenes like a hero saving a dragon, or a parting of life and death, or sacrificing one's life for righteousness. However, Payek and Orn lived a carefree life, traveling and fighting everywhere. It was only in their later years that they founded the Grey Iron Duchy. Not long after, Payek passed away, and Orn became the Grey King, who protected the Grey Iron Duchy. This is a dragon that attaches importance to companionship. A trip that he can leave whenever he wants to is better than any other method of breaking in. Feeling that the knot in Orn's heart was starting to loosen, he couldn't help but observe and conclude he had never given up on creating the List Dragon Knight training manual. Different dragons had different training methods. If it was an ordinary Dragon Knight, he could only achieve perfection by finding the most perfect training method. He usually relied on external forces to force perfection. With the blessing of the power of fate, he was so willful. However, in order for his descendants to be able to successfully ride a dragon, he still had to summarize his experience. Roar! Orn let out a sound that sounded like a spoiled child. He wanted to drink potions. I don't have the red dragon water for now. Only some ordinary potions. Just make do with it. Liz took out a handful of ordinary potions and threw them to Orn. Orn swallowed the potion and let out a happy roar. He didn't complain because it wasn't the red dragon water. For it, magic potions and whatnot were secondary. It was enough for it to be able to travel around with its own knights. It focused on spiritual perception, not material perception. So, they traveled all the way to the west. When they arrived at the former Grey Iron Duchy that had been abolished and merged back into the Eagle Kingdom, they entered the environment that Orn was familiar with. In his spiritual world, List's figure was already completely clear, and he had become an existence of flesh and blood. In other words, the knot in his heart was removed, and the soul imprint was successful. At this moment, List had officially become a Grey Iron Dragon Knight with a perfect stage. At the same time, he felt that one of the threads of fate that surrounded him suddenly flickered. He concentrated and plucked this thread of fate. Very quickly, he successfully felt the source of the thread of fate. It involved a dragon that was waiting for him. This is the power of fate. If I go with the flow, I will be able to enjoy the results. He stopped paying attention to the power of fate and reconnected with Orn through the soul integration. Let's go, Orn. I feel a dragon in the distance, waiting to join the Fire Kingdom. Roar. Orn was a little unhappy. He didn't like List thinking about other dragons at this time. However, the soul imprint was successful. No matter how much he disliked it, he couldn't resist List's decision. He flapped his wings and flew into the sky. Under List's guidance, he flew towards the wild forest in the southwest direction. The land had already entered the mountains from the plains. The terrain was getting steeper and steeper. There were fast-flowing rivers and towering mountain peaks. It was like flying into 100,000 mountains. All kinds of World of Warcraft birds were hovering in midair. The dense forest revealed the light of mana retroaction. This was the paradise of World of Warcraft. There were no humans to disturb them. Do you see it, Orn? Roar. It's right there behind that snowy mountain. Go over and you'll be able to see it. I can already feel it more and more clearly. It's a beautiful sapphire dragon. Solid mana, making power also solid. This feeling, yes, it's the royal sapphire dragon. Li Ji's masterpiece, the Tiger King, with a young man dressed in hemp clothes. Heavy snow pressed down on a black dragon. There were wine, knives, and stories in this pugilistic world. Chapter 1091. The Royal Sapphire Dragon was a type of sapphire dragon. The color of the gemstone produced by this sapphire dragon was called royal blue. The royal blue's color saturation was very high. It was bright and bright. Under the illumination of the sun, it would emit a shimmering halo. Upon careful observation, one could see that there was a hint of bright purple in the deep blue. The reason why it was named royal was that this sapphire dragon was the symbol of the Blue Dragon Empire. According to legend, the first emperor was a royal sapphire dragon knight. After he established the Blue Dragon Empire and proclaimed himself as the emperor, His mount was called the Royal Sapphire Dragon. Not only is the Royal Sapphire Dragon noble, but the gemstones it produces are also worthy of this noble name. List searched for the Royal Sapphire Dragon while recalling the information of this dragon. Royal Sapphire has the nature of sturdy magic. It can greatly strengthen magic and battle energy, increasing the user's combat power. Perhaps the increase for the Sky Knight is relatively small, but equipping the Earth Knight can definitely double the combat power of the Orders of Chivalry. If one had to compare, the Royal Sapphire Dragon was roughly equivalent to the Magic Metal Dragon of the Metal Dragons. Its combat power was definitely inferior, but its actual value was similar. Roar! The gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Aon did not sense the Royal Sapphire Dragon, but he was seriously dissatisfied that List was thinking about the Royal Sapphire Dragon at the moment. However, the soul imprint had been successful, so he did not care much about Aon's dissatisfaction. Let's hurry, Leo. There will be more and more such things in the future. You need to adapt and advance. I am the king of the Fire Kingdom, the future emperor of the Fire Empire. I will unify the legendary continent and the Malfa continent and build a civilization across the entire planet. All the dragons will be reserved by me. Roar! Aon was speechless at such a thick-skinned thought. The mountains were getting higher, and the snow was getting thicker. They were almost at the border between the Eagle Kingdom and the Yellowstone Kingdom. The geographical climate was somewhat similar to the Sichuan-Abet line on Earth. However, there was still lush vegetation below the snow line. If I fly further, I will enter the plateau area and cross the border into the Yellowstone Kingdom. He activated the magic eyes and carefully observed the snow mountains and dense forests on the ground. Although the threads of fate are clearly linked to the Royal Sapphire Dragon, they cannot give me an accurate location. The threads of fate represented by the power of fate were not precise tracking devices, but rather a mysterious feeling. He needed to rely on Orn's senses of dragons to lock onto the specific location. We will circle around this snowy mountain. Pay attention and sense carefully. See if you can sense the location of the Royal Sapphire Dragon. Roar! Take your time. There's no need to rush. With our speed, we'll be able to sense it sooner or later. Roar! You're saying that if the Royal Sapphire Dragon hides in the cave, it will interfere with your sensing range. Let's look for it first. Anyway, we have time. It's normal to spend 10 days to half a month for the Royal Sapphire Dragon. For the sake of a new dragon, List naturally would not waver. Even if they had to spend a year and a half here, as long as they could obtain the Royal Sapphire Dragon, it would be worth it. This search lasted for 5 days. He could sense that the Royal Sapphire Dragon was nearby, but no matter how many times he went back and forth, Orn was unable to trigger the connection between dragons. We can basically lock onto it. With this place as the center, the Royal Sapphire Dragon will definitely exist within a radius of 800 kilometers. But I don't know why there's no feedback from the carpet search. The magic eye can't see the feedback light, and Orn can't sense it either. The search yielded no results, so List decisively started a second search. Again, Orn. This time, the minimum sensing range of our carpet search is 50 kilometers. Even if the Royal Sapphire Dragon can hide its breath, it can't be shorter than 50 kilometers. The sensing range between dragons was usually about 100 or 200 kilometers, and the lowest was rarely less than 100 kilometers. At present, List only knew that the invisible dragon bard could rely on the material boundary to avoid and reduce the sensing range to 15 kilometers. No matter how noble the name of the Royal Sapphire Dragon was, it was just a sapphire dragon. It could not be compared to a sacred dragon. 2 weeks later, the carpet search of 50 kilometers was over, but the location of the Royal Sapphire Dragon was still not found. Standing on the top of a snow-capped mountain, Orn sprawled lazily on the snow, yawned, and then fell asleep. He was not enthusiastic about finding the Royal Sapphire Dragon. List jumped off the Dragon Tooth platform and stood in the knee-deep snow. He frowned as he looked at the surrounding snow-capped mountains and lush valleys. The threads of fate have always pointed to this place. Why can't I find a Royal Sapphire Dragon? According to the rules of the Smoke Mission, I have already completed the prerequisite mission, complete Greymouth Iron Dragon's spiritual brand. Now it's basically a part of receiving the reward. It shouldn't have taken so long. Could it be that the Royal Sapphire Dragon can really block the dragon's sensing? He thought. He took out a mirror-like thing from the space ring. It was the magic compass that Laird Truth had brought. This magic equipment could detect high-level magic in the surroundings. However, at this moment, after the magical compass was activated, only List and Orn's flickering light could be seen on it. It's useless. After 2 carpet searches, the magical compass has no effect at all. Its detection range is much weaker than the dragon's perception. Withdrawing the magic compass, he took out a broken crystal blade and blew away the surrounding snow with his aura. He was ready to set up camp and rest here. This strangely shaped sword was inlaid with densely packed crystals, which shone brightly under the sunlight. Against the backdrop of a strange sword, List's whole person looked heroic and vigorous. He was wearing a set of World of Warcraft leather armor made from the skin of a high-level World of Warcraft, Golden Cheetah. Its defense was not necessarily strong, but the glittering golden lines, coupled with the magic metal embellishment, made it look top-notch. The current List no longer pursued external forces. The defense of any equipment, even if it was made from dragon scales, was not as strong as the defense of his phoenix incarnation. The sharpness of any weapon, even if it was made from dragon teeth or dragon souls, was not as sharp as the Bone Dragon Winnie's Bone Dragon Sword or the Fire Dragon Leo's Rat Halos. The broken crystal blade and golden leather armor were just beautiful embellishments to show off his majesty as a king. Looking up at the bright sun above his head, List put aside the worry of not being able to find the Royal Sapphire Dragon. He wanted to recite a poem to the white snowy mountains, the scenery of the north, thousands of miles of ice, 10,000 miles, before he could finish his sentence. A bright dark blue color suddenly rose from the top of a snowy mountain in the distance, flying into the sky against the sunlight. Even though it was far away, he could still see clearly that it was a blue dragon that was flying happily. He did not know if it was an illusion, but when the dragon flew, it would always leave a light blue trail that slowly dissipated. "Quick, wake up, Orn!" List casually kept the broken crystal blade and jumped onto Orn's dragon tooth platform. "The Royal Sapphire Dragon has appeared. Let's chase after it." "Roar!" Orn flapped his wings and stomped on the ground with his hind legs, shooting straight into the sky like a gray arrow. The wind whistled in his ears. List had a smile on his face, his gaze firmly locked on the blue figure in the distance, and he continued to recite a poem. "I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, but by chance I find it without even looking." Chapter 1092. The gray-mouthed iron dragon Aun did not conceal its aura, so its aura was soon sensed by the Royal Sapphire Dragon flying happily in front. "Roar!" The Royal Sapphire Dragon's roar had no special tone, but the tone made it easy for List to understand that it was warning the gray-mouthed iron dragon not to approach him. Dragons were not hostile to each other, but there was absolutely no friendly atmosphere between dragons. This situation was more similar to the feeling between elves. Each dragon was an individual, and there was rarely a group phenomenon. As the noblest creature in the world, the arrogant character of dragons did not allow them to live in groups. There were even some evil dragons in the wild who tried to hunt young dragons. The nutrition of young dragons was far better than any World of Warcraft or potions. Of course, there were few wars between adult dragons. Even the most powerful adult fire dragons among the elemental dragons, gem dragons, and metal dragons could easily defeat some weak adult dragons. But to completely kill an adult dragon, a huge price had to be paid, and it was very likely that the price was paid, but it was not necessarily killed. It was a waste of magic power. Therefore, the Royal Sapphire Dragon only issued a warning, then turned and flew into the distance. "Aun, tell it to stop. We will use peaceful measures before resorting to force." List would not let the Royal Sapphire Dragon go just like that. In any case, he was determined to have this beautiful gem dragon. "Roar!" Aun let out a roar. Roar! The royal sapphire dragon turned its head to warn again. The warning was useless. List drove the gray-mouthed iron dragon toward the royal sapphire dragon regardless, and soon the distance between the two was shortened. The royal sapphire dragon was not afraid of the gray-mouthed iron dragon, so it had no intention of escaping. When the gray-mouthed iron dragon approached, it quickly turned around and issued a final warning to the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Roar! Roar! The two dragons, separated by 800 meters, hovered in midair and confronted each other. Sunlight shone down on the gray-mouthed iron dragon, reflecting a faint glow. When it shone on the royal sapphire dragon, it flashed a magnificent bluish-purple halo, as if it was wearing a coat weaved by the glow. List had to admit that the royal sapphire dragon's appearance was at the peak of gem dragons. He was second only to the invisible dragon bard. Its body length is approximately 55 meters, and its wingspan is approximately 65 meters. Its wingspan is longer than its body length, so it doesn't appear bloated. Instead, it appears somewhat slender and soft. Its blue dragon scales with a hint of purple in them are exquisite and translucent, and its body's curves and proportions are perfect. It's full of power and elegance. Carefully sizing up the royal sapphire dragon, List silently praised it, until the royal sapphire dragon could no longer tolerate it and let out a provocative roar. Roar! He then gestured for the gray-mouthed iron dragon, Aun, to turn his body and expose himself to the royal sapphire dragon's field of vision. He said in a clear voice, Royal sapphire dragon, I don't know if you understand the human language and if you can understand what I'm saying. If you can understand, please give me a response. Roar! The response was given. But this did not mean that the royal sapphire dragon understood the human language. Instead, it was conveying a message. If they did not leave, it would launch an attack. List smiled and said, Don't be so rude, royal sapphire dragon. I came to meet you with sincerity. It is fate that has guided us to meet here. You are a dragon, and I'm a dragon knight. You and I are destined to have an inseparable dragon rider fate. Unfortunately, this line was fed to the dogs. The royal sapphire dragon did not seem to have any contact with humans and did not understand the human language at all. When it saw that List and Aun had not left, it flew into a rage and flapped its wings fiercely. Then, gray wind blades flew out from between its wings and blasted towards List and the dragon. It actually knows magic? List was shocked. He had never seen a dragon release magic. For dragons, they did not need to rely on the power of magic. They themselves represented the pinnacle of power. Their bodies and dragon breath were the most common way of fighting. Aun twisted his body and somersaulted to avoid the bombardment of the wind blades. List took the opportunity to take out the 5-meter-long Thunder Fury Dragon Spear. At the same time, he cast magic eyes to carefully observe the magic released by the Royal Sapphire Dragon. In his special field of vision, the wind blades that were constantly bombarding him showed the unique luster of high magic. It's not magic. It's condensed from high magic. It still belongs to the category of dragon magic. He quickly determined that the Royal Sapphire Dragon could not release magic. Magic was made up of magic that formed runes and then formed a powerful sequence of attacks. The magic condensed into wind blades in front of him was similar to the fire rain that the fire dragon Leo created when he appeared. There was no sequence of rune combinations. Fortunately, it's not magic. It belongs to the acceptable range. Just as he was concentrating on his analysis, the Royal Sapphire Dragon saw that although the Greymouth Iron Dragon dodged its attack, it was still flying around it with its pair of dragon eyes. Its anger surged again. Its crystal-like wings flapped fiercely and lifted itself up. Then it twisted its wings and spewed dragon magic again. At this moment, the skies suddenly changed color, as if dark clouds were pressing down. Pieces of hail condensed in the air. Like a bullet exploding, it hit the Greymouth Iron Dragon. Every hail cut through the air with a sharp, ear-piercing sonic boom. Hailstones and sonic booms were everywhere. This is not magic. It's more terrifying than the high magic, super magic released by Qi alone. It's almost at the level of the supreme magic, super magic released by her riding a unicorn. List was shocked. After the shock, he was quickly pleasantly surprised. The stronger the royal sapphire dragon was, the happier he was because it was his dragon. Oh, let's break it. One man and one dragon rushed to the royal sapphire dragon against the crazy hail. The invisible and intangible dragon magic mixed with the dragon fighting energy wrapped around to form a protective film, resisting the magic hail attack that was more violent than magic. As a perfect stage Greymouth Iron Dragon Knight, List's combat power at the moment was definitely at the top of the Dragon Knight. With the combination of strength and skills, the combat power that the Dragon Knight could show was not something that a single dragon could do. Boom! The hail hit the protective film woven by magic and fighting energy and quickly melted and vaporized. Only a small amount of it could penetrate the protective film and hit the dragon scales. But the penetrated hail was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and it was no different from scratching an itch. One man and one dragon quickly penetrated the flashy magic hail attack. Seeing that it was about to collide with the royal sapphire dragon, this beautiful dark blue sapphire dragon did not panic in its beautiful dragon eyes. It just continued to flap its wings at a normal rhythm, then rolled up more hail to launch an attack. But the next moment, Liz suddenly realized that the hail that should have been melted and vaporized by the protective film seemed to have solidified dozens of times at once. Not only did it not melt, but it was like a real bullet, constantly tearing at the protective film. Then with a strong impact, it hit the Greymouth Iron Dragon. It left a deep impact mark on the dragon scales. Roar! One felt the pain. List, who was connected by the mind and soul as one, also felt the pain. But his brain was exceptionally clear, and in a quarter of a breath of thought, he analyzed the reason for the sudden increase in attack. This is the special nature of the Royal Sapphire Dragon's magic. The gemstones it produces can strengthen magic, and naturally, it can strengthen itself. The strengthened magic attack directly made the condensed hail harder than rock, and even comparable to the hardness of steel. Hitting the Greymouth Iron Dragon was no different from a machine gun baptism. It hurts. It is indeed powerful, worthy of being known as the magic metal dragon of the gem dragons. Unfortunately, a dragon without a knight, no matter how gorgeous its attack moves are, they are just flashy without substance. He endured the pain caused by the constant bombardment of hail and shouted loudly, "Royal Sapphire Dragon, become my dragon. You and I will be one, and then you can burst out with your true talent and combat power. Nine Heavens Divine Emperor." Chapter 1093. The Royal Sapphire Dragon could not hear what List was saying due to the howling hail. It seemed to be disdainful of understanding what a human, an ant, was saying. Seeing that its magic hailstorm attack was loud like thunder, but small like rain, and did not cause any obvious damage, it opened its mouth and spat out dragon breath. It was a brilliant bluish-white light, almost like a laser. Before the gray-mouthed iron dragon could react, it had already hit its chest and abdomen. Roar! The gray-mouthed iron dragon, Orn, felt the pain and let out an angry roar. The Royal Sapphire Dragon succeeded in its attack and opened its mouth again, preparing for the next dragon breath attack. Dodge, Orn! List endured the pain of the mind and soul as one and maneuvered the gray-mouthed iron dragon to dodge. He glanced at the spot hit by the laser dragon breath. A large circle of dragon scales had been shattered. The wound seemed to have been burned by fire, and the charred area was emitting smoke. It was as if he could smell the roasted dragon meat. It had to be said that the power of this laser dragon breath was almost enough to seriously injure the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Seeing that the Royal Sapphire Dragon was about to spit out laser dragon breath again, Orn's ferocity was completely stimulated. He also opened his mouth and spat out dragon breath. Countless metal torrents turned into steel blades and shot straight at the Royal Sapphire Dragon in a pillar-shaped path. However, the speed of its dragon breath was slightly slower. The royal sapphire dragon twisted its body and dodged it. The laser dragon breath that was brewing in the dragon's mouth took the opportunity to shoot over. Boom! The beam of light brushed past Orn's wings and shot into the distance. Orn dodged the attack and raised his dragon head again. He opened his dragon mouth and was about to spit out his own dragon breath, Metal Torrent. However, it was dominated by List's thoughts. Stop spitting dragon breath, Orn. This primitive and backward fighting style should not appear on a dragon knight. Immediately, his thoughts flashed with a brilliant light. Charge with me. The Dragon Battle Secret Manual was quickly unleashed. The grip of Thunder Dragon Spear was slightly shorter, but it could barely unleash the Dragon Battle Secret Manual that the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Knight had studied for generations. Human Dragon Unity. He went straight to the Royal Sapphire Dragon, then infused a large amount of magic power and chi into the Dragon Spear. Wrapped in a violent momentum from a tricky angle, he stabbed the Royal Sapphire Dragon's left armpit. In the case of a failure in communication, if he wanted to subdue the Royal Sapphire Dragon, he could only first beat it into submission. One gunshot after another. After the well-trained Dragon Knight entered battle mode, it finally displayed its true combat prowess. Every time the Dragon Spear struck, its speed, angle, and strength were all in one. Even the air was pierced and rippled, as if it could pierce through the boundary of matter with just a little more progress. The Royal Sapphire Dragon's combat power was not weak. Whether it was the sturdy magic power attack or the electric laser dragon breath, they were powerful, offensive moves. Unfortunately, it had never received the Dragon Knight's training, so its power was scattered and not condensed. It had a ferocious and violent aura, but lacked the invincible explosive power. After going around in circles for a few rounds of battle, List had successfully turned the situation around with the Greymouth Iron Dragon. From the beginning, it was difficult to deal with, but it gradually suppressed the Royal Sapphire Dragon. The Dragon Spear, Thunderbolt's grip stabbed the beautiful dragon scales of the Royal Sapphire Dragon several times, making bloody holes one after another. Dragon blood splashed out. Royal Sapphire Dragon, I said that you have power but can't use it. Don't you understand? You lack a knight like me to guide you. In between battles, List could still multitask and try to convey his attitude. However, the response he got was the Royal Sapphire Dragon unexpectedly turning around and waving its long tail like a thick whip. The distance between the two dragons was definitely more than the length of the dragon's tail. But just as the dragon's tail swung toward the Greymouth Iron Dragon, a blue-white lightning spread from the tip of the dragon's tail. In an instant, the dragon's tail turned into a handle, and the front end was a chain of lightning arcs tens of meters long. Crackle! Crack! The chain of lightning arcs hit the Greymouth Iron Dragon fiercely, then broke into tiny lightning bolts, shooting around the Greymouth Iron Dragon's body. Roar! Orn trembled from the electric shock. List, who was riding on the Dragon Fawn platform, also had electric sparks flashing all over his body. However, he quickly transformed his skin into the Phoenix incarnation to avoid the damage of the lightning. Although the Greymouth Iron Dragon still felt the numbness of being electrocuted, it no longer affected him from continuing to attack. The Thunderbolt's grip rushed forward and stabbed the Royal Sapphire Dragon again. After pulling out the tip of the spear, dragon blood splashed out. In this way, the battle was on and off. The Royal Sapphire Dragon would release a chain of lightning arcs. List would stab with the dragon spear, and the Greymouth Iron Dragon would occasionally tear with its claws. Most of the time, it was two dragons of similar size, rolling up their respective air currents and colliding with each other, showing the most barbaric fighting of flesh and blood. This battle quickly entered a white-hot stage. On List's side was the Dragon Knight, and its combat power was obviously superior to that of a single dragon. However, the Royal Sapphire Dragon had many means, and its fighting style was very different from ordinary dragons. Like a magician among dragons, it could always counterattack the Greymouth Iron Dragon unexpectedly. As they fought and flew, Their position was already very far away from the original snowy mountains. The sun on the horizon also began to set, and it was gradually evening. Still not admitting defeat, Royal Sapphire Dragon, roar, roar. Dragons were arrogant. The Royal Sapphire Dragon, which was covered in wounds, was still in high spirits and did not reduce its arrogant attitude at all. Its huge dragon eyes looked deeply at List a few times. Enduring the stab of the dragon's spear, it quickly fled into the distance. Seeing this, List smiled slightly. He did not seem to be in too much of a hurry. He simply communicated with Orn, chase. He fell behind the Royal Sapphire Dragon at a moderate distance, not letting it escape the Greymouth Iron Dragon's dragon sense. One chased and one fled. The last ray of light from the evening dissipated, and the earth entered night. Seeing that the Greymouth Iron Dragon was not in a hurry to chase, the Royal Sapphire Dragon relaxed appropriately and healed its body that had dozens of holes. However, at this moment, a sudden shiver of vigilance rose in its heart. The aura of the other dragon was hidden by the Greymouth Iron Dragon's aura, and it was impressively exposed. The dragon eyes patrolled in the night, but it could not find where the other dragon was. It could only speed up anxiously, trying to escape. Before it could speed up and get rid of the Greymouth Iron Dragon, a gap invisible to the naked eye suddenly appeared in the void of the night. Then, a sharp squeak pierced the night sky. Grayish-white mist suddenly appeared and sprayed on the Royal Sapphire Dragon's body. This mist was sharper than the sharpest blade. As soon as it came into contact, the Royal Sapphire Dragon's dragon scales, which had almost recovered, were cut into pieces and continued to penetrate into the flesh below. Roar! The Royal Sapphire Dragon was in so much pain that it wanted to die. It flapped its wings wildly, not hesitating to consume its supreme dragon magic, and rolled up endless magic hailstones to attack indiscriminately in all directions. However, such an attack could not lock on to the position of the dragon that attacked it. The looming aura was like a maggot attached to the bone, constantly penetrating into the heart of the Royal Sapphire Dragon, making it feel tremendous pressure. And behind it, the Greymouth Iron Dragon had also caught up, one in front and one behind. The aura of the two dragons firmly locked onto it, as if they would launch a fatal attack at any time. Click! A strong light rose from the back of the Greymouth Iron Dragon. It was the light emitted by a row of magic light bulbs, shining on the Royal Sapphire Dragon. List's voice was particularly clear in the night. Royal Sapphire Dragon, I said that the fate between you and me is preordained by fate. You should not run away. Come on, make the right choice. You and I are one. I need your strength, and you will receive the offerings of the Fire Kingdom. Roar! The Royal Sapphire Dragon's roar was still full of disdain. Even in the face of two dragons, with nowhere to run, it still did not change its attitude. Sigh. List shook his head. He knew that the Royal Sapphire Dragon would never lower its head unless it was half crippled. As an experienced dragon rider, he knew the dragon's character very well. If a human and a dragon were incompatible, the dragon would rather die than surrender at will. Therefore, the previous verbal communication and the slightly pretentious battle were just to buy time so that the invisible dragon bard could arrive as soon as possible. From the beginning, he had never intended to conquer a dragon alone. I am a dragon knight with 8 dragons. Chapter 1094. Happy Lantern Festival to everyone from the Big Dragon Died currently typing. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 1095. Compared to most gemstone dragons, the Royal Sapphire Dragon was indeed very powerful. Its magic attack and laser dragon breath were powerful means of attack. Unfortunately, it was facing List. As the one favored by fate, the power of fate had already arranged everything clearly. Under the pincer attack of the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon, Orn, and the invisible Dragon Bard, the Royal Sapphire Dragon was brutally abused and fell to the ground with serious injuries. Thud! Orn, who was slightly injured, stepped on the royal sapphire dragon's tattered body and trampled on it to vent his anger. Roar! He was very displeased with the royal sapphire dragon because List had been thinking about this dragon along the way, which made him very angry. Bard landed on the side, his beautiful appearance undamaged. Although it was still underage, the holy dragon's powerful combat power was becoming more and more prominent. However, it had always lived a peaceful life and rarely had emotional fluctuations because of other dragons. Roar! The royal sapphire dragon lay on the ground and wanted to struggle, but it had no strength. Its magic and energy had been exhausted in the battle, but its eyes were still shining with an unyielding light. It would rather die than lower its head. Why do you have to do this, Sai? List motioned for Bard to come over and opened the royal sapphire dragon's mouth. Then, he took out a dragon's soul fruit and stuffed it into the dragon's mouth. Then, he let Bard lift the dragon's neck and let the dragon's soul fruit fall smoothly into its throat. Watching the enchanting dragon's soul fruit being swallowed, he revealed a satisfied smile. Royal sapphire dragon, there's no use in resisting something destined by fate. Why not resign yourself to adversity? In fact, from the first second I saw you, I even thought of your name. Roar! The royal sapphire dragon wanted to kill List with its breath, but its magic was exhausted, and it could not even spit out a trace of dragon breath. List was still talking to himself. You have a powerful magic attack similar to magic, and can be called a dragon magician, so your name is Rise. Rune magician, Rise. I hope you can spread this name, and let everyone know the charm of the Demon King. The Rune magician in League of Legends was a Demon King-level hero in the mid lane. Rise roared hoarsely, Roar! Sleep! Sleep! When you wake up tomorrow, the world will be different. The door to a new world will officially open to you. You will also understand that I am the most suitable knight for you. It is fate that has chosen us to be one. Roar! After a few indignant roars, the royal sapphire dragon Rise gradually felt exhausted. Its unyielding eyes gradually lost focus, and its eyelids became heavy. It didn't take long for it to fall into a deep sleep. The dragon eyes closed, and the scales protecting the dragon tooth platform slowly opened. List glanced at the gray-mouthed iron dragon that was still stepping on Rise's back. Orn, come down. Don't step on Rise. Orn walked down unwillingly. Roar! This is the magic potion you gave me to replenish my energy. Hurry up and recover from your injuries. Grabbing a handful of magic potion and stuffing it into Orn's mouth, List sent it away. Naturally, Bard also obtained a batch of potions. It was a pity that the fire dragon water and water dragon water were special dragon potions, and the red dragon water was difficult to obtain. He could only use some magic potions that were not very effective on dragons. After comforting the two dragons, he jumped onto Rise's back and found the exposed dragon tooth platform. He took a deep breath and slowly sat on it. Boom! In an instant, he had already established a mysterious connection with Rise. The scene in front of him changed immediately. He was still in the dense forest a moment ago, but in the next moment, he had already arrived at the dark blue world of the Crystal Stairs. The experienced List naturally understood that this Crystal Stairs was Rise's spiritual world. Every dragon had an imaginary spiritual world. This world was both illusory and real. Furthermore, the structure of the spiritual world was different according to the personality of every dragon. Such a large crystal staircase. The material should be similar to the gemstones and crystals produced by Rise. It seems like he is very narcissistic about himself. Standing at the edge of the bottom of the stairs, List looked up and realized that there was a dark blue dragon lying at the top of the stairs. Only part of its body could be seen. There was no doubt that this was Rise's own projection in the spiritual world, but its body was wrapped in colorful chains. This was the power of the enchanting dragon's soul fruit. As if sensing List's intrusion, the dragon bound by the colorful chains moved. It turned its head with difficulty and looked down at List from above. Its eyes were filled with a complicated look. Rise was already unconscious in reality, but it was awake in the spiritual world. They looked at each other for a few seconds. Lys nodded. Can I complete the spiritual battle by climbing the stairs? I understand, Rise. I will reach the top, whether you believe it or not. The rules of the battle in this spiritual world were very simple. Climbing all the stairs would be considered a victory. Every step of the stairs would have a different magic attack. In other words, Rise was actually a dragon with the soul of a mage. The huge stairs he built were a visual display of all kinds of magic. A type of magic would appear on each step, an attack technique formed by magic. Phew! Rise, who was at the top of the stairs, let out a disdainful breath from his nostrils and then slowly crawled down. Although he was awake, he could not fight against the heavy, colorful chains on his body. The meaning of his disdain was self-evident. Lys was not angry. He just smiled. Rise knew nothing about fate. In the next moment, the cloak formed by the power of fate moved without any wind. His body emitted raging flames, and he quickly turned into a fiery red phoenix. Screech! The loud and clear cry was like a horn. His wings were wrapped in gray smoke, and he flapped them gently. His body was like a bolt of lightning as he rushed toward the stairs. He had already reached the first step, and magic quickly formed countless wind blades. But before the wind blades could be added to the phoenix's incarnation, Lys had already rushed to the second step. Then, when the second step began to transform into dense hailstones, he had already quickly passed through it and rushed to the third step, attracting countless thunderbolts. But the thunderbolts were also like wind blades and hailstones. As soon as they were brewed, the phoenix's incarnation rushed to the fourth step at a speed that could not be captured by the naked eye. The first step was at least 1,000 meters wide. Any knight would not be able to pass quickly and could only resist the violent magic attacks. But for the phoenix's incarnation, who was supersonic, passing through the steps was a piece of cake. The magic attacks could not even hit a feather on his body. In the blink of an eye, the phoenix's incarnation had rushed out of the 20th step and was halfway up the stairs. The royal sapphire dragon, Rise, could no longer lie still. It struggled to raise its head and stared at the phoenix incarnation that Lys had transformed into. It wanted to open its mouth and roar. But a colorful chain quickly appeared on its dragon mouth and bound it tightly. It could not open its mouth at all. But this side of the mental world still changed as Rise struggled. The upper step that had not released magic began to brew magic attacks in advance without waiting for Lys to rush over. Tornadoes, lava rains, tsunamis, rock collapses, lightning chains, scorching suns, overlapping icebergs, bubbling pus, and other illusionary spells quickly appeared. Rise had already changed the rules of the mental battle to stop Lys, the cheater. Screech! The phoenix incarnation let out another loud cry and turned into a petrel in a storm. It plunged into the area of violent magic attacks without fear. The gray smoke entwined around its wings began to wander around its body. Every time a magic attack came, the gray smoke would swim over to block it. The power of fate that had turned into gray smoke had long been mastered by Lys. This was a power on the same level as the colorful chain. The colorful chain could bind the dragon's mind, and the gray smoke could naturally resist the attacks of the mental world. Through the tornado, through the lava rain, through the tsunami, through the bubbling pus. Finally, the 42nd step was all crossed by Lys' phoenix incarnation. In less than a few minutes, it had already reached the top of the dark blue crystal steps, a square platform. The royal sapphire dragon, entwined by the colorful chain, lay on it. The various spells at the bottom of the steps had dissipated. On the square platform, Lys stood in front of Rise's dragon head and returned to his human form. Rise, do you understand now? You and I are destined to be one. There may be some twists and turns in the process, but everything has already been arranged. With that, he leaped lightly onto the dragon's back, found the dragon-toothed terrace, and sat down with a smile. At the same time, in the real world, Lys, who was riding on the back of the sleeping royal sapphire dragon, suddenly opened his eyes. The outcome is set /33_. Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1096. The Dragon Knight had already succeeded by winning the Battle of Souls. List stroked the beautiful blue scales of the royal sapphire dragon. Rise, who was gradually recovering, his heart heavy with a sense of harvest. The thread of fate that was pulling Rise had disappeared without a trace. New threads of fate flickered around him, but he didn't feel it carefully. He had been running around for half a year for Rise, and now he needed a little rest to catch his breath. He turned over and jumped off the Dragon Fawn platform. He began to look carefully around the sleeping royal sapphire dragon, admiring every curve and every scale of the dragon's body. Rise, oh rise, although you're unconscious, the brief mind integration connection still gave me a certain understanding of you. You can not only produce expensive royal sapphire, but you are also a powerful combat aid. You're only 200 years old, but you can protect the Flame family for at least 600 years. It was said that after the age of 800, dragons would enter old age and leave the country that provided for them, fly to the Dragon Valley, where no one knew where it existed, and wait for the end of their life. At present, most of List's dragons were still considered young. Bone dragons, unknown age. After all, they were a different species among dragons, unable to be classified as metal dragons, gem dragons, elemental dragons, or sacred dragons, or evil dragons. Light green gem dragons, more than 400 years old. Gray-mouthed iron dragons, more than 300 years old. Mountain copper dragons, more than 200 years old. Royal sapphire dragons, more than 200 years old. Invisible dragons, more than 80 years old. Aluminum dragons, more than 50 years old. Fire dragons, 5 years old, but already looked as old as 50 or 60 years old. Water dragons, 2 years old. Elemental dragons were different from ordinary metal dragons and gem dragons. As long as there was a sufficient supply of supreme magic, they could grow very quickly and enter adulthood in advance. Other dragons couldn't, even sacred dragons. For example, the invisible dragon bard couldn't shorten his adulthood no matter how much supreme magic he consumed. This was probably related to the production of dragons. Elemental dragons didn't produce, and all their magic was consumed by themselves. The excess magic of metal dragons and gem dragons would mostly be transformed into minerals in the form of gems and metals. The invisible dragon among sacred dragons would also consume magic to produce spatial gems. Probably the same was true of dusk dragons, which produced time gems. The emerald dragon might have consumed magic power to nourish the mind fruit tree. The fairy dragon wasn't sure, and neither was the smoke dragon. List didn't understand whether these two sacred dragons needed magic power as supplements. It was really difficult for him to confuse the power of destiny with magic power, and it was even more difficult to think that taking potions could increase the power of destiny. The power of fate was too mysterious. There's also the evil dragon, the Mistral dragon, and the moon dragon that's been passed down for generations among the Moonslayers. I wonder what's so special about these dragons. His thoughts were a little scattered, and soon he returned his gaze to the royal sapphire dragon. Rise, who was breathing steadily, had already scabbed over his wounds and would soon heal. The physique of a dragon was strong, and its recovery ability was astonishing. Unless its soul was injured, it could easily recover. Rise's magic can overflow and then form a magic-like attack move. Restricted by the efficiency of the use of magic, the power is not strong. But now it's different. With me helping Rise complete the process of magic power, forming runes, and constructing magic, it will inevitably become a true dragon mage. No, it should be a dragon mage, a supreme magic-level dragon mage. List envisioned enthusiastically. With his identity as a royal sapphire dragon knight, once the magic development was completed, his combat power should be similar to a chi riding a unicorn. Coupled with the powerful physique of a dragon and the power of dragon breath, his combat power would be close to that of an adult fire dragon knight. At that time, I'll be the shadowless king of the dragons when I ride Bard, and I'll be the dragon berserker when I ride Leo, and I'll be the dragon magic shooter when I ride Rise, and I'll be the dragon magic shooter, and I'll be able to destroy the world with my magic. Just thinking about it was satisfying. So, he fantasized for a full quarter of an hour before barely restraining his thoughts. Looking at the darkening sky, he began to take out the necessities for camping in the wild from his space ring. Let's camp here tonight. When Rise wakes up tomorrow, I'll give him a batch of magic potions to help him fully recover. Then, I'll return to Flame Island. I'll bring Rise to meet the Great Elves and test whether any of them like him. The next step is to open a new teleportation magic array. The first teleportation magic array of the Fire Kingdom was the Mind Island Reed magic array. This was a trade route to the Sapphire Duchy, Eagle Kingdom, and Steel Ridge Kingdom. The second teleportation magic array was the Realgar City Jade Mountain Magic Array. This was a strategic route to the Blizzard Mountain Duchy and the Yellowstone Plain Kingdom. At present, it was only in contact with the Blizzard Mountain Duchy. At the same time, the Realgar Jade Teleportation Magic Array was the golden passage for the Fire Kingdom to set foot on the legendary continent. The undeveloped virgin land of Realgar Plain around Realgar City would gradually prosper as more and more nobles were infected here. The two teleportation magic arrays in succession had exhausted a large number of magic materials stored by the kingdom. It would take time to gather a new batch of magic materials. Moreover, the kingdom had been too busy during the previous period of founding the kingdom and had no time to pay attention to the construction of the teleportation magic array. Thus, the third one had been delayed until now. This teleportation magic array had been determined to be the Chalcopyrite Crater Magic Array, or the Yellow Fire Teleportation Magic Array, for short. The two ends of the teleportation magic array were the crater natural nodes of the endless volcanoes of Flame Island and the Chalcopyrite natural nodes of the fertile land of the Eagle Kingdom, where Aluminum Dragon Connor originally lived. Once this teleportation magic array was completed, it could quickly reach the southwestern wilderness of the Eagle Kingdom. As a result, the majestic Jade Teleportation Magic Array connected the southern border of the Eagle Kingdom. The Yellow Fire Teleportation Magic Array connected the southwestern border of the Eagle Kingdom, and the Heartwood Teleportation Magic Array connected the southeastern coast of the Eagle Kingdom. The three teleportation magic arrays surrounded half of the Eagle Kingdom. When the time was right, the Fire Kingdom would quickly complete the annexation of the Eagle Kingdom. Comparing the size of the Fire Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom, this plan seemed like a snake swallowing an elephant. However, the essence of the battle between the kingdoms was the war of dragon slaying. As long as List won the war of dragon slaying, he could quickly lead his giant dragon army to suppress the entire Eagle Kingdom by relying on the three teleportation magic arrays that could shuttle quickly. In the end, he would complete the magnificent feat of a snake swallowing an elephant. The nobles of the Eagle Kingdom, big and small, would be deterred by the dragons and would wisely choose to surrender to the Fire Kingdom. However, to be on the safe side, in order to complete the plan of annexing the Eagle Kingdom in one go, I must subdue all the dragons and Dragon Knight of the Eagle royal family. It would be best if I could secretly build a few teleportation magic arrays inside the Eagle Kingdom, so that my dragons can quickly intercept the dragons of the Eagle royal family. List had a grand plan. He not only wanted to annex the Eagle Kingdom, but he also wanted to snatch all the dragons of the Eagle royal family. However, if the dragons and Dragon Knight wanted to escape, it would be difficult to catch them in time. There were many conditions that needed to be met. First, he must build a teleportation magic array in the Eagle Kingdom and rely on the teleportation magic array to travel quickly and intercept the escaping dragons and Dragon Knight. Relying on the invisible dragon bar to travel through space alone, although it was fast enough, it would be difficult for him to use the group of dragons. Only when the dragons acted together could List defeat all the Dragon Knight of a kingdom by himself. Second, he must keep track of the movements of the dragons and Dragon Knight at all times. This required a chi to release space magic beacons to locate each dragon, and then rely on the invisible dragon bard to sense the location of the beacons and adjust the route in time to catch them. Third, in order to conquer the dragons as soon as possible, the mystical dragon's soul fruit was essential. Now Qi was studying the emerald dragon's hind legs, and he believed that he would soon be able to cultivate the mystical dragon's soul fruit in large quantities. After giving one a rise, he now only had one mystical dragon's soul fruit in stock. Fourth, there were still many conditions, but List did not continue to think about it. The annexation of the Eagle Kingdom was a grand plan that had to be planned carefully. Once the action began, he would be able to forcefully annex them with lightning speed, not giving the Dragon Knight of the Eagle royal family a chance to escape. During the preparation for the action, everything will be as usual. Once a year, there will be an expansion order. Snatch it. Not only will it increase my power by cutting the other party's flesh, but it will also numb the Eagle royal family. After thinking about the plot for a while, the sky gradually darkened. Liz turned on a magic light bulb for field lighting, took out a small round table, and then brought out the still steaming delicacies one by one. Along with the delicious Banpo milk tea, he began tonight's dinner. With the space ring that allowed everything to remain still, he could still eat the delicious food cooked by Mrs. Abby while he was away. But looking at the 10 space rings on his 10 fingers and the several space gems strung around his neck, he knew that even if he went away for a few months, he would not lack food and drink. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, he lay on the rocking chair to digest. Tonight, the moon was not visible, but the starry sky was bright. A Milky Way loomed, causing him to feel slightly homesick. Where's the planet I am on now? Is it still in the Milky Way? Maybe one day I can land on the moon of this planet, but going back to Earth, I'm afraid it's impossible. /33_ 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1097. The next day, List had breakfast and practiced his combat energy for a while. It was not until the sun was high in the sky that the royal sapphire dragon, Rise, woke up from its slumber. Its body was still very weak, and it lay prostrate on the ground, its eyes fixed on List. Don't look at me like that, Rise. Here are all the potions I brought. Take them to nourish your body. When your body recovers, I'll take you back to the Kingdom of Fire to start a new life. As for now, I know you have a lot of topics to talk about. He took out a large bundle of potions and placed them in front of Rise. Rise did not accept the potions, nor did he make a sound. He continued to stare at List. If it could, it wanted to spit out a laser dragon's breath and turn List into ashes. But the battle of the mind had already been completed, and it could not resist the restrictions of the mind. It could only silently vent the resentment that had accumulated in its heart. It did not like List. It had not liked him from the beginning, especially when it thought of how it had been brutally trampled, then drugged and confused, losing the Dragon Fawn platform, and being forced to lose to an insignificant human in the battle of the mind. It almost had a heart attack. In the battle of the mind, List had one fair and square, climbing all the stairs and reaching the final platform. But this did not increase Rise's approval of List. The reason was simple. It did not need a Dragon Knight in its dragon life. Even if there had to be a Dragon Knight, it should not be a despicable Dragon Knight like List. Without paying any price, it had taken a shortcut. The Dragon Knight it was looking forward to should have resisted the magic baptism, climbed all the stairs with his bare hands with indomitable willpower, and climbed to the top, instead of turning into a firebird and flying up with a swoosh. This is despicable cheating. Insignificant and unforgivable. The blurry telepathic link allowed List to understand Rise's anger. He didn't mind Rise's complaint. The process wasn't important. What was important was the result. There's no rule against tricks in the battle of the mind. Rise, I hope you'll be a dragon that accepts defeat. Who? Blue-white electric sparks came out of Rise's nostrils. He really wanted to spit out laser dragon breath. The potions here are very beneficial for the recovery of your body. You're now my dragon. In the future, the Fire Kingdom will provide for you. You don't need to hunt hard anymore. There will be a large amount of potions serving you every day. List glanced at Rise, who was still panting with rage, and decisively flipped over. He sat down on the dragon tooth platform and instantly completed the mind as one link. At that moment, the thoughts of the man and the dragon were synchronized. There was me and you in me. List could feel and influence Rise's thoughts, and Rise could also feel and influence List. This was a way of communication that surpassed language, and all differences could be resolved in an instant. Roar! After hundreds of rounds of confrontation, Rise finally compromised and began to swallow the potion on the ground. List, remember, although I lost to you in the battle of the soul, it doesn't mean that I acknowledge you. I refuse to train with you in any form. It was just that Sundara, as an experienced person, List responded indifferently. Don't worry, Rise. From now on, I won't force you. I will seriously move you. Time would change everything. There was no need to be impatient. Rise rested until the afternoon. With the replenishment of the potion, Rise's body quickly recovered. Of course, the supreme magic still needed time to recuperate. At least he could fly now. Considering Rise's face, List did not continue to ride him. Instead, he switched to the invisible dragon bard. He also did not choose to ride the gray-mouthed iron dragon, Orn. Orn's body was huge, and the dragon tooth platform was not comfortable to sit on. Bard was 16 meters long and had a wingspan of 16 meters, 1 meter longer than when they first met. The position of the dragon tooth platform was very suitable for riding. Moreover, his petite body did not block his vision easily. Of course, when riding a dragon, the vision of a human and a dragon could be combined. Let's go to Realgar City. List ordered. 1 man and 3 dragons quickly flew into the sky and flew toward Realgar City in the clouds. 3 days later, they arrived at Realgar City. They passed through the magic gate of Realgar City under the cover of the night. In addition, they signaled the guard knight in advance to extinguish the lights and drive away the crowd. No one discovered the new Royal Sapphire Dragon. The same was true for the magic gate of Jade Rock Mountain. It quietly shuttled through the night and then kept flying southeast. Of the 9 large islands of the Fire Archipelago, only Mangrove Island and Anchor Island had not been in theft. He planned to raise the Royal Sapphire Dragon on Anchor Island. There were a large number of clowns stationed around Anchor Island. There were also mermaids patrolling. It could keep the secret of the Royal Sapphire Dragon well. 1 day later, List arrived at Anchor Island with Rise. Rise, you will live on Anchor Island for the time being. If you have any needs, just let me know. I will satisfy you. You have a strong vision. When you go out, pay attention to avoid humans. Don't be discovered. You already understand the ambition of the Fire Kingdom. I hope you can cooperate with me. Rise responded indifferently. It was not interested in human hegemony, but it would not hinder List's plan. Roar! It flew around Anchor Island, found a low mountain, and settled down reluctantly. I need a sufficient supply of magic potions. No problem. List simply agreed to supply Rise with magic potions for this period of time. When Rise's body was completely recovered, he would reduce the supply of magic potions as appropriate. The landlord had no surplus food. There were too many dragons to supply, and no amount of magic potions could support 9 dragons. If it weren't for the fire dragon water for Leo and the water dragon water for water dragon water, his magic potions would be even more tight. For the magic potions, this year's expansion order must be carried out in advance. The Eagle Kingdom has a rich heritage. It is natural for them to share the burden of raising dragons for me. The Royal Sapphire Dragon, Rise, settled down. List returned to the Palace of Stars, Sun, and Moon to deal with official business for the day. He was going to take his great elves to get along with Rise for a few days to see if any great elf suddenly fell in love with Rise and triggered evolution. Ella, how are you getting along with Winnie? In the valley, List saw the great thorn elf lying on the head of the bone dragon Winnie. List, you're back. Winnie is a good dragon, but I haven't fallen in love with her yet. Ella saw List, and there was a hint of exhaustion in her excitement. She had tried her best to fall in love with every dragon, but the results were not satisfactory. None of the dragons made her fall in love with them. In particular, the bone dragon Winnie was the friendliest of all the dragons. After all, Winnie's predecessor was a human, but she did not fall in love with her. Since you haven't fallen in love, then take it easy. I'll take you to see a new dragon. Is there a new dragon? Let line up first. I still have to get along with the water dragon Wouter. Ella waved her hand. Her attitude was not very enthusiastic. Being forced to get along with the dragon for a long time had exhausted her. Well, you go back to the palace and rest for a while. Don't tire yourself out. I know. Ella responded with a sigh, and then forced herself to cheer up. Wow, Ella will definitely evolve into a dragon elf and become the real elf housekeeper of the sun, moon, and stars palace. The bone dragon Winnie looked at Ella dotingly and communicated with List through the dragon heart code. Ella is so cute. I hope it evolves into a dragon elf soon. List, did you get another dragon? Well, I met it when I went out. It's a royal sapphire dragon. His name is Rise. Royal sapphire dragon? The bone dragon Winnie raised her head. This is a very powerful sapphire dragon. I remember that the Magico family once had a royal sapphire. With this royal sapphire, my ancestors fought side by side with the first sapphire Grand Duke. Recalling the past, it made her a little sad. However, it quickly recovered from the past and said, "Congratulations, Your Majesty. You are fully deserving of the title of Son of Glory. The Fire Kingdom will rise under your leadership." The Nine Heavens Emperor. Chapter 1098. Vani's compliment made List feel very comfortable. Bone dragons were relatively weak in combat, and strictly speaking, they couldn't be called dragons. Dragons that couldn't fly were a disgrace to the dragon family, and bone dragons didn't have dragon breath. If it wasn't for Virginia Truthsoul, it would have been a walking corpse. Vani, I heard that you've been doing research with a Chi. Yes, Your Majesty. His Excellency Acheron will spend an hour with me every day to study the soul structure of the bone dragon and analyze the power structure of the cursed dragon, Bone Dragon Vani replied. The cursed dragon was one of the three evil dragons. A Chi and List believed that it had broken the soul barrier and became an existence that surpassed the Dragon Knight. In order to purify the devil's sea, to study the cursed dragon, and to study the power of the soul, a Chi naturally asked Vani to cooperate. If a bone dragon had to be defined, it was a creature made of soul elements, similar to the cursed dragon. Have you come up with any results? Not yet. Unfortunately, I've become a bone dragon, and it's not convenient for me to do experiments myself. His Excellency Acheron can only spend an hour a day to study me. His Excellency Laird is also very busy and doesn't do much research on the soul. I really hope to unravel the secret of the bone dragon. Becoming a bone dragon made Virginia Truth feel the joy of being alive. However, she was originally a human, so she still hoped to regain her human appearance. There will be a day like that, Vani. You have to believe in a Chi. She is the greatest magic shooter of this era. Even in the era of the Moon Empire, she will still be the greatest magic shooter. Your Majesty, I trust His Excellency Acheron without reservation. Then I won't bother you any longer. I still have official business to attend to. List was about to leave when Vani suddenly sent him a telepathic message. Your Majesty, I haven't left the Sun Moon Valley for a few days. I wonder if I can take up some of your time and accompany you around? The blue flames in her dragon eyes flickered. Oh, sure. List's attitude was noncommittal. Since the bone dragon, when he wished for it, he mounted the bone dragon's dragon-tooth platform and instantly completed the heart and soul connection. In that instant, my mind and soul collided, and the resonance of the dragon mount transcended the physical body, displaying an incomparably wondrous feeling. Riding a dragon was a very pleasurable thing, especially when it was a bone dragon with a female human soul. They circled around the Sun-Moon Mountain range twice. Only then did he bid farewell to Bone Dragon Winnie. When he returned to the Palace of Sun, Moon, and Stars, he felt refreshed and comfortable. The next day, he summoned all the great elves living in the palace and stuffed them into a large box. He signaled to the invisible dragon bard to grab the large box and fly directly to Anchor Island. After arriving at Anchor Island, they first sent a large amount of potions to the royal sapphire dragon, Rise, to help it recover. Then, he signaled the great elves to carefully sense Rise's aura to see if any great elf could like this beautiful gemstone dragon. Roar! Seeing the countless little flies flying around him, Rise was furious and shouted loudly. List comforted him. Rise, bear with it. You only need to accompany them for 3 days, okay? Roar! Don't worry, this kind of thing won't happen repeatedly. Besides, don't you think they're very cute? If dragons are synonymous with power, elves are synonymous with beauty. Roar! It was questioning. Could Parker, the great kelp elf with a mouth full of sharp teeth, also represent beauty? List looked at Parker, who was lying lazily on a dragon scale, and smiled awkwardly. Actually, when Parker doesn't smile, he's still very beautiful. Many people in the territory say that he's the handsome little prince of the ocean. As if sensing that someone was saying that he was handsome behind his back, Parker, who was basking in the sun, suddenly turned his head. Seeing that List was also looking at him, he immediately grinned, revealing his sharp teeth. Hey, List, the sun today is really handsome, just like Parker. That's right. List waved his hand insincerely. Rise couldn't help but roll his eyes, and then he crawled on the ground weakly, too lazy to raise his head to communicate. Then he simply closed his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. It's only 3 days, he thought helplessly. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The great potato elf, Kutcher, was the first to shake his head. List, I don't like it. Its scales don't meet my aesthetic standards. Then the great corn elf, Mickey. I can't count its scales, and there are many irregular places, which increases the difficulty of calculation. So, List, I can't like it, he said seriously. It said in a serious tone, you should find me a mathematical dragon so that I can study mathematics with it. In fact, he could only count up to 76 so far, which was still far from the 100 mark. In the following 3 days, Bobby the great banana elf, Tick the great corn elf, Nami the great mangrove elf, and most other great elves shook their heads one after another, expressing that they did not like Rise. Looking at the great elves shaking their heads one after another, List sighed in disappointment, feeling that he was biting off more than he could chew. How could it be so easy for dragon elves to trigger evolution? Moreover, these great elves had only been in his hands for a short period of time. The longest one, Parker, was only 6 years old. A great elf could live for 200 years, and they still had a long time to brew and wait for the opportunity to evolve. However, just as he was comforting himself, he suddenly saw another great elf standing on Rise's back. It did not speak, but just stared at the royal sapphire dragon Rise in confusion. Klein, the great calabash elf? List narrowed his eyes and clearly felt a thread of fate flickering around him. One end of this thread of fate was connected to Klein, and the other end was connected to Rise. Could it be that Klein's opportunity to evolve has arrived? This is an exciting surprise. It's actually Klein. Klein in the Lesser Elf era was inconspicuous. Although the calabash was very fun and always reminded List of the Calabash brothers, its use was really limited. It could only be used as a container to hold drinks. However, the value of Klein in the Greater Elf era soared as the nature of magic storage was discovered. It had surpassed the great elves of potions and grains, and was second only to Kinji the great lotus elf, who could produce dragon potions. Even the thorn great elf, Ella, who could produce thorns as an auxiliary medicine, was not as valuable as Klein. After repeated research by arcanists, the calabash that could store magic had become the magic battery of the magic world, and a temporary new name replaced the calabash itself, the magic pool. The birth of the magic pool allowed many magical technologies to be realized. Although it was still far from being popularized for civilian use, it was more than enough to set off a magic pool revolution. For military use, the arcanists of the Royal Arcane Academy had developed a magic array that relied on the magic pool to provide energy. In other words, relying on the magic pool and the magic array, ordinary people could also release some magic. This was equivalent to a hot weapon in the magic world. Faced with the impact of the magic pool revolution, Liszt was still in a state of confusion, not knowing whether to support or prohibit it. But there was no doubt that the value of the calabash itself was immeasurable. Once the calabash elf, Klein, evolved into a dragon elf, the output of the calabash was bound to skyrocket. He was very satisfied with the harvest this time. The magic storage gourd is unique to my territory, and the magic pool technology is also in my hands. Klein, work hard to evolve. Chapter 1099. Although the threads of fate had connected Klein, the great calabash elf, and Rise, the royal sapphire dragon, after careful inquiry, Liszt found that Klein's evolutionary opportunity was still very weak, and he had not really fallen in love with this beautiful sapphire dragon. I don't know, Liszt, I think it. Rise is very beautiful and special, but I don't know if I like it. Well, I understand, Klein. You only have a certain affection for Rise now, because you haven't gotten familiar with each other yet. Liszt comforted. In fact, he guessed that it should be because Klein had only become a great elf for a short time, and his body had not yet fully developed. This led to the vague, evolutionary opportunity. But the power of fate had already captured its fate with Rise, which meant that sooner or later, it would really fall in love with Rise. So he added, "How about this? You go back with me first. Every time I come a train with Rise, you follow me until you completely fall in love with him, and then move in for long-term contact." Okay, I really need time to digest. I really hope that I can evolve into a dragon elf before that bastard, Ella. Klein clenched his fists, narrowed his eyes, and began to imagine how he would treat Ella after he became a dragon elf. Should he beat her up or beat her up? Soon, the noisy great elves, along with the invisible dragon bard, rose into the air and left Anchor Island. The royal sapphire dragon looked at the quiet sky and let out a long sigh of relief. I breathed the free, sweet air again. The weather in June was getting hotter and hotter. The Fire Kingdom was developing steadily, and the focus of Liszt's work had changed from training with the gray iron dragon Ornth to training with the aluminum dragon Connor. Up to now, among his many dragons, the light emerald dragon Ethan had long completed the spiritual imprint and became Emily Flame's mount. The fire dragon Leo and the invisible dragon bard had also completed the spiritual imprint, but Liszt did not find a new knight for them, because he had reserved both dragons for himself to ride. Bard's ability to travel through space was an excellent choice for a mount. Leo had the potential to break through barriers. Now, the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orn's spirit brand was completed. The only ones left were the mountain copper dragon Marta, the aluminum dragon Connor, the water dragon Wouter, and the royal sapphire dragon Rise. An adult dragon's temperament has already been set, and it will be very difficult to perfect the soul imprint in a short period of time. So Marta and Rise will not be considered for the time being. The young dragon's temperament was still uncertain, so it was easy for it to achieve perfection in the soul imprint. Wouter is still too young, so I'll let him roam freely for a period of time and complete Connor's spirit imprint first. However, he still had to look for a new knight for the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orm before he started his training with the aluminum dragon Connor. A dragon without a knight would not be able to unleash its full power. He summoned the first batch of dragon knight candidates to the Palace of Stars, Sun, and Moon. There were only 3 of them. Nicholas, Hippolyta, de Gaulle, you have not let me down. Especially Nicholas, you already have the title of Sacred Swordsman. The title of Iron Sacred Swordsman is a little vulgar, but I am very optimistic about your talent. Liszt walked in front of Nicholas and patted the young man's shoulder. Iron Sacred Swordsman Nicholas Bellows was 17 years old this year. He was the nephew of the Marquis of Dragon Valley City, Nicole Bellows, and a member of the Iron Knight Bellows family. He was a little ugly, but it did not hinder his superhuman talent. Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty. You are Nicholas' idol, and it is your glory that inspires me to work hard to become a dragon knight. Nicholas said solemnly. This flattery was a little superficial, but it did not hinder List from being very happy when he heard it. I believe that you will become an outstanding dragon knight. Then, he looked at Dagall, who was beside him. Dagall did not have a surname. He was the son of a commoner, born in the Sapphire Duchy's Hot Springs Island. His father used to be a serf in the Eagle Kingdom and was sold to Hot Springs Island, where he was raised as an Earth Knight by the Count of Hot Springs Island. Unfortunately, he died in battle during a development order, leaving behind a posthumous son, Dagall. His mother did not remarry, but relied on her meager family fortune to raise him. After List eliminated the Count of Hot Springs Island, the young Dagall followed his mother to live in the Fire Kingdom. 2 years ago, when he was selected for the Dragon Knight program, he was only a 12-year-old elite Earth Knight. Now, he had become a 14-year-old ordinary Sky Knight. Dagall, you have outstanding talent, but what I value more is your tenacity and your filial piety to your mother. Without my mother's upbringing and teaching, there would be no Dagall today, the young man replied. But don't be too arrogant. List heard that when Dagall was training in the Royal Knight Academy, his behavior was rather arrogant. Perhaps it was because he was too self-abased when he was young, but now he was too conceited. If someone else said that about him, he would definitely put on a straight face and reply, I became a Sky Knight at the age of 14. What about you? However, in front of the legendary Dragon Knight List, he was nothing. Thus, he replied honestly, Yes, Your Majesty. I will be humble and cautious and train diligently. List nodded and shifted his gaze to Hippolyta, who had already grown into a young lady. The last time he went to the Royal Knight Academy to take a look at the next generation, his evaluation of Hippolyta was that she was a beauty in the making. Her appearance was slender and graceful, but her wheat-colored skin was somewhat lacking. But now, Hippolyta's skin was gradually whitening, and her body had completely grown. Her breasts were not large, but they were full and erect. Her waist was strong and slender, and the curve of her buttocks was even more alluring. Her long legs were slender and straight, and she was beginning to transition from a girl to a woman. She had the demeanor of a beauty. It was said that some busybodies privately called her the flower of the Killer Moon, along with Emily Flamingo, the flower of flames, and Paris Flamingo, the flower of jewels. They were known as the 3 golden flowers of the Kingdom of Fire. As for the noble Chi, no one dared to call her that in private. I heard that you've been learning from Emily recently. List asked with a smile. Hippolyta's large eyes shone with admiration as she replied, Yes, Your Majesty. Her Highness has taught me many of the Sky Knight's battle techniques. Her talent was outstanding, but she was still lacking compared to Nicholas and Dagall. She had only recently advanced. With Emily's guidance, I'm at ease. List nodded and did not continue the conversation. He returned to his throne made of magic metal and said solemnly, All of you need to become a perfect Sky Knight to have a chance to interact with dragons. However, the Kingdom of Fire is a young kingdom, and youth means more opportunities. I'm prepared to open the gray iron dragon to you. Ah, ah, ah. 3 cries rang out. The 3 youths' breathing quickened as they stared at List. Everyone wanted to have a chance to interact with dragons. List was very satisfied with the youth's excitement. He did not keep them in suspense and said directly, I'll give the 3 of you a fair chance to interact with dragons for half a year. You'll have to attack the gray iron dragon on your own. Then, wait for Aoun to choose one of you, or none of you. Not every member of the Dragon Knight clan could become a Dragon Knight. The probability of them succeeding was actually very low. Thank you, Your Majesty, the youths replied excitedly. Go and prepare. Report to Her Highness Emily. She'll be fully responsible for arranging for you to interact with the gray iron dragon. List dismissed the 3 youths. Looking at the youths' high-spirited backs, he shook his head slightly. Based on his understanding of Aoun, the 3 of them probably wouldn't be able to win Aoun's approval. Nicholas was too ugly, Dagall was too arrogant, and Hippolyta was too weak. Let's hope that one of them can create a miracle. I need to nurture more Dragon Knight to help me. The day before yesterday, the Royal Knight Academy, various Knight Academies, and the feudal nobles have already reported outstanding young knight to me. Then, quickly select the second batch of geniuses to join the Dragon Knight plan. Chapter 1100. The Royal Knight Academy was the largest knight academy in the Fire Kingdom. The royal title indicated that it was on the same level as the Royal Arcane Academy. It was not only a school, but also the superior unit of the knight academies in various regions. The knight academies in various regions would only teach students up to Earth Knight before they graduated. After that, if an Earth Knight wanted to further their studies, they could only go to the Royal Knight Academy. This was similar to studying for a master's degree or a PhD. Therefore, the Royal Knight Academy recommended many outstanding knight slots, more than the number of outstanding knight academies and knight recommended by the feudal nobles combined. They were all youths who had become Earth Knight or had the potential to become Sky Knight at a young age. What Liz needed to do was to select the most outstanding ones to join the Dragon Knight Reserve program. It seems that there are not enough outstanding seedlings. There are not many who are comparable to Emily, and there are not many who are comparable to the Gaul, Nicholas, and Hippolyta. It seems that it will be difficult for this batch of Dragon Knight Reserve Program members to become a Dragon Knight. But speaking of which, can Nicholas and the others really become Dragon Knight? Shaking his head, he did not think about this problem anymore. If they could become Dragon Knight, it was worth celebrating. If they could not become Dragon Knight, then he would continue to train them generation by generation. One day, there would be a new generation of Dragon Knight. Moreover, in a few years, he and the Fire Dragon Leo might be able to break through the barrier and become an invincible barrier knight. He might even be able to conquer the entire legendary continent by himself. Therefore, the Dragon Knight Reserve program has to be carried out. Leo and I cannot fall behind in our training. It is a pity that Leo is still underage and has not reached the peak of his strength. It is difficult for him to break through the barrier. I have to find more volcanoes for Leo to absorb volcano super magic to speed up his growth. He selected 10 talented young knight, 8 males and 2 females, to join the Dragon Knight Reserve program. List handed the list to Emily Flames, who had rushed to the Palace of Stars, Moon, and Sunday. He had already handed the Dragon Knight plan to Emily. Take this list. I'll leave the little ones in your care. I will, Your Majesty. Emily took the list and nodded. She then looked at List with sparkling eyes. I'm already 17 this year. Oh. List responded with a careful look. The first female Dragon Knight in the legendary continent was no longer the skinny little girl she used to be. Compared to Hippolyta, the Moon Killer Flower, who had yet to reach adulthood, Emily, the Flame Flower, had a more outstanding bearing. Her Dragon Knight aura added a lot more points to her. She wasn't as voluptuous as the Gem Flower Paris, but her slightly exotic face had a different kind of charm. Furthermore, Emily had practically been groomed by him. The sense of accomplishment of witnessing her growth made Emily hold an important place in his heart. His fiery gaze swept over Emily's body, as if he could see every inch of her body through her clothes. Sensing his burning gaze, Emily didn't avoid it. Instead, she looked at List's eyes with eager anticipation, breathing heavily. A moment later, List stretched out his hand, lifted Emily's chin, and said softly, "Then you'll stay here tonight and grow up." At the end of June, good news came from the Royal Arcane Academy. After more than a year of cultivation, the first batch of bloodline fruits, cultivated by stimulating the golden apple tree, had finally ripened. There were a total of 16 bloodline fruits in the first batch. The uses of these bloodline fruits had long been allocated. 10 would be used to cultivate violent dogs into blizzard beasts, and 5 would be used to cultivate livestock into World of Warcraft. The last one was reserved for Lolth, the rainbow whale. Chirp. Lolth was raised in the Mermaid City. This low-level dragon was close to humans. Back on Black Horse Island, it was List's exclusive seamount. However, with the growth of Chi and the acquisition of the Mermaid's Heart contract, Lolth could no longer provide riding services for List. Like Fiery Dragon, Blizzard Beast Dosin, Lightning, and Chocobo Loki, It had long been unable to keep up with List's footsteps. It could only be raised. Fiery Dragon retired early and became a full-time breeder. Dosin was now leading a growing pack of blizzard beasts and becoming an important member of the Blizzard Orders of Chivalry in the Burning Legion. Lightning was the ceremonial symbol of List's inspection of the Burning Orders of Chivalry. In order to express his closeness to the members of the Burning Orders of Chivalry, he needed to choose a black blood horse as a mount. Of course, it was only for military parades and other occasions. It was impossible to ride Lightning into battle. Loki was given to Emily by List. After Emily successfully rode the dragon, Loki was transferred to Paris. As for Lolth, after being brought from Black Horse Island to Flame Island, she had been raised by List in the Mermaid City and had been served well. Unfortunately, like Loki, she had never found a new seven-colored whale. She could only live alone. Lolth, eat it. Once you're done, you'll evolve into a powerful rainbow whale. List stood by the water and gave Lolth a bloodline fruit with water attributes. He then patted Lolth's big head. Evolution can't get you out of loneliness, but at least you can live for a few more decades. The lifespan of dragons was not short. Low-level dragons could live for decades, and it was normal for mid-level dragons to live for hundreds of years. Chirp, chirp! After eating the bloodline fruit, Lolth was very happy. She quickly reacted and began to swim around in the water excitedly. Duke Buru Boshi, please take care of this seven-colored whale, List said to the mermaid who was watching from the side. As you wish, your majesty. Buru Boshi nodded and then said, I've carefully observed Lolth's little dolphin. If my guess is correct, there were many dolphins like this in the Moon Empire. They were called sea tigers, the favorite mounts of the Nagas. Maybe there are also sea tigers in the Devil's Sea. Sea tigers? So it's another ancient species. No wonder there are almost no other seven-colored whales in the sea. List believed Buru Boshi's guess. He quickly thought of the chocobo Loki. He wondered if chocobos were an ancient species. Unfortunately, there was a gap between the Moon Empire and the modern era. Many species and knowledge had disappeared in the long river of history. Suddenly, he thought of a smoke mission reward that was almost forgotten. There's a natural node under the Palace of Stars. It's the entrance to the ancient ruins. It's related to the ancestors of the Moon Slayers, the 6 magic shooters who built the statues. I wonder if the ruins contain the secrets of the ancient civilization. In the stories of the Moon Slayers, their ancestors fought with the Moon Dragon and killed it. There were indeed many ancient dragon skeletons in the Flame Islands and this part of the sea. For example, the important mining area of the Fire Kingdom, the Dragon Pit Mine. This meant that a great war must have happened here. Therefore, the ruins might contain the secrets of the ancient era. Unfortunately, the spatial rift is blocking the entrance to the ruins. For now, Achi hasn't found a way to clear the spatial rift. She can only look at the entrance but can't go in. List was a little depressed. The 2 dragons he relied on the most, the invisible dragon Bard and the fire dragon Leo, were both underage. Alas, time waited for no man. Chapter 1101. The evolution of Lolth, the rainbow whale, was completed in just half a month. She didn't change much, except that her body grew by a third. She also learned a new water magic, Water Wave Shield. It was a very common water magic. Chirp, chirp. Lolth's life was as happy as ever after the evolution. Perhaps she didn't understand that she was a single dolphin, or that she could play with human zookeepers and not worry about food and water. That was all the happiness she could understand. All in all, Lolth seemed happier than List because she didn't need to worry about the mundane affairs of the human world. Today's war will be handled by the Outer Pavilion. Emily will be in charge of the specific affairs. When the Orders of Chivalry arrive, I will secretly protect the Kingdom's Orders of Chivalry from the Dragon Knight of the Kingdom of Eagle. He gave the authorization to the Orders of Chivalry in a meeting of the Outer Pavilion. Then he had a short video conference with Yevich Waterpeanut and Amat Ice Shield, who were far away in Snow Wind Mountain Duchy. Yevich, Is the second prince of Snow Wind Mountain at the end of his rope? Yes, your majesty. The first prince, Spot, colluded with the Dragon Knight of the Kingdom of Yellowstone and got the help of a large number of elite knights. The second prince, C. Carter's orders of chivalry has been seriously thwarted. He can no longer compete for the position of Duke of Snow Wind Mountain. Yevich replied. The knight who sent the letter to condemn you. Was it Spot's idea, or was it the Dragon Knight's idea? List asked again. After the first prince, Spot Cornflower, defeated the second prince, C. Carter's orders of chivalry. Yevich and Amat received a letter from Spot, accusing the Kingdom of Fire of meddling in the internal affairs of Snow Wind Mountain Duchy. It was obvious that the Kingdom of Fire was the one who interfered, not the Kingdom of Eagle. Amat replied, Your Majesty, according to my understanding of Spot, if it weren't for the Dragon Knight, he wouldn't have exposed the existence of the Kingdom of Fire. He would only continue to acquiesce in the actions of the Kingdom of Eagle. This was the tragedy of a small country. Even though the two princes of Snowstorm Mountain Duchy already knew that Yevich and the others were Knight of the Fire Kingdom, they still had to pretend to be deaf and dumb and admit that Yevich was pretending to be a member of the Eagle Kingdom. Otherwise, if they really shed all pretense of cordiality, the Fire Kingdom might just launch a large-scale invasion. There was a moment of silence. In the end, Liz said, since the Dragon Knight of Yellowstone Plain has intervened, then the attack on Snowwind Mountain Principality has temporarily come to an end. However, you can invite C. Carter to join the Fire Kingdom. Tell him that I will allow him to become a marquis and help him reclaim his dukedom when the time is right. Recently, he had to concentrate on conquering the Eagle Kingdom and did not intend to provoke the Yellowstone Kingdom for the time being. Moreover, the Blizzard Mountain Principality had almost been hollowed out after years of civil war. Out of the 6 to 7 million people, more than 2 million had been secretly moved here, which was 1/3 of the total population. If this continued, the Snow Wind Principality would really be stripped of its sheepskin. Therefore, it was good to take a break. He would first keep the second prince, C. Carter, as an excuse to intervene in the Blizzard Mountain Principality, and then wait for the right time to continue to extort him. As you wish, your majesty. I will arrange for C. Carter to surrender to you as soon as possible. Yevich accepted the order. List nodded. When the Blizzard Mountain Principality is finished, your focus will be on the construction of the Realgar Plain. This wilderness is the springboard for the Fire Kingdom to advance to the legendary continent. You must seize the time to cultivate it well. Yes, your majesty. Now the Fire Kingdom has a population of 8 million. My feudal nobles and I account for about 5 million people, and the feudal nobles account for the remaining 3 million people. It's not enough, not even 10 million people. It's even worse than some rich principalities. There's still a long way to go. In July, various orders of chivalry began to gather, preparing to march to the hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom and launch the first development order of the Fire Kingdom. List did not pay attention to the development order. After he successfully helped the great Calabash spirit, Klein fall in love with the royal sapphire dragon rise, he went with a chi to the fertile land south of the former Great Iron Duchy. There, the chalcopyrite volcanic crater magic transmission circle was being built. The yellow flame transmission circle was temporarily not open to the public and was only used for military purposes. For example, a large number of blood servants would be sent from here in the early stages. These bats in the dark would go to the surrounding countries to collect information. With the help of a chi, the cultivation difficulty of the blood servants was reduced and their ability to hide was improved. Therefore, under the Burning Legion, there was a growing blood orders of chivalry. Under the hard work of the Marchioness of Reed City, Dawn Daybreak, the blood servants of the blood orders of chivalry had more than 360 members. They were distributed in the 3 kingdoms and the surrounding principalities. They patiently lurked and used magic platforms to communicate, continuously passing information, so that List could keep track of the movements of the surrounding countries. The Iron and Steel Ridge royal family has recently been close to the Eagle royal family. There have been 2 secret meetings between the members of the royal family. It seems that they are plotting against me. The Blast Furnace Castle royal family is relatively stable. They don't participate much and focus on fighting against the Fallen Leaf Kingdom in the west. Further west of the Fallen Leaf Kingdom is the Noble Frost Kingdom. Now that the Blood Servants have just arrived, it will take some time to collect information about the Noble Frost Kingdom. When I complete the unification of the northeast corner of the legendary continent, it will be the Noble Frost Kingdom's turn. Great Emperor Jupiter, you dared to send people to assassinate me. It would be impolite not to return the favor. When Bard comes of age, I will personally help you arrange everything. Liszt had never been a magnanimous person. If there was enmity, he would take revenge, and he would think about revenge all day long, especially this kind of enmity that involved life and death. Of course, it was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. For the time being, his strength was not strong enough, so revenge on the great Emperor Jupiter could be put aside. Brother, the magic formation has been opened. The Chalcopyrite magical door will be open for a short time. Now you and Bard can follow the established plan to open the wormhole space and set up the transmission circle. Achi's voice woke up the distracted Liszt. Okay. After coming back to his senses, he and the invisible dragon Bard quickly passed through the natural node and came to the world outside the material world. Focusing his thoughts to stimulate the space magic, he connected the Chalcopyrite magical door and the volcanic crater magical door together, and opened up a wormhole space that could be traveled at will. In this way, after Achi's finishing touches, the Yellow Flames transmission circle was completed. The rest of the work, such as opening a stronghold, could be directly handed over to the outer pavilion. Liszt took Achi and left the land of fertility directly. He did not return to the Fire Kingdom, but went deep into the southwest hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom. Bard flew at the material boundary. Liszt was riding on the Dragon Fong platform, with Achi lying in his arms. Next to him was Charlie, the unicorn. From time to time, he would look at Liszt with disdain. Every time this happened, Charlie would be very angry. The pure girl he recognized was being tainted bit by bit, and he did not have the ability to change all this and could only accept it passively. Achi put her hand on Liszt's chest and enjoyed twisting her petite, soft body. Brother, we will stay here for a few days. The mermaids will be back soon, and Achi promised them to purify the sea. There is no hurry to purify the sea. Let's leave these mermaids to dry first. I will decide the specific time. Liszt was resentful of the mermaids. The volcano that the Blood Servant found is not big, but the magma is very rich, enough for Leo to absorb for 2 to 3 months. His trip this time was to send the fire dragon Leo to the newly discovered magma volcano to help him grow. After calculating for a while, he continued, to make it easier to go back and forth, I will look for natural nodes around the volcano. This will take about 1 or 2 days, which is equivalent to 1 or 2 nights in the wild. Don't always think about work. It is rare for you to travel, so relax yourself. Okay. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1102. The fire dragon Leo dived into the magma. It had not absorbed the volcano's supreme magic for many days and was already suffocated. The dragon potion, fire dragon water, could not satisfy its appetite at all. Then, Liszt looked for natural nodes around the volcano. Every natural node was related to the supreme demon incident, and there might be important existences hidden in them. For example, metal mines, dragon bones, gem mines, and the remains of divine objects. However, he did not find a single natural node within 300 kilometers of the volcano. Maybe there are fewer supreme magic events in the legendary continent, so there are fewer natural nodes. The Flame Islands and the Shell Sea are the battlefields of ancient wars, so there are so many natural nodes. Finally, 2 days later, he found a natural node near a city 500 kilometers to the northeast. Unfortunately, there was a human castle nearby. Even if there were any minerals around, they could not be mined. However, it was enough for the invisible dragon bard to pass through. Sooner or later, the Eagle Kingdom would be his. At that time, he would carefully investigate all the natural nodes. "Brother, are we going back?" Ichi had been accompanying List. On the first day, she could put down her work and enjoy the scenery, but on the second day, she began to miss the laboratory. She had several experimental projects waiting for her to preside over. List shook his head helplessly. "Since you can't wait to go back, then let's go back." However, Ichi, you have to remember that the truth is endless. Some truths were discovered in the past, and there may be more truths waiting to be discovered. You have to learn to know when to stop. We still have life to enjoy. Ichi knows. "Brother, don't worry about Ichi. Ichi and you both have a long life. There is still a lot of time to enjoy. 400 to 500 years is indeed long, but it is also short. We still have to enjoy ourselves." List smiled. He knew that it was difficult to persuade Ichi. This little siren had long been addicted to the ocean of magic and could not extricate herself. He could only use external forces to interfere. In the future, he must find time to disturb Ichi's magic experiments and force her to relax and enjoy life. If magic is the only companion in her life, it will be very regrettable. It was I who led Ichi to the wrong path of magic. I have the responsibility to give her more beautiful memories. Not long after Ichi returned to the laboratory, the 5 mermaids who were patrolling the sea finally returned. The Marquis of the Fishermen, Gulvig, the Marquis of the Water, Tibitas, the Marquis of the Trench, Sharawala, the Fugitive Marquis, Viswendi, and the Lost Marquis, Kikilish. List did not receive them immediately. Instead, he arranged for the Duke of Saltwater, Buruposi, and the Marquis of Great West, Etnia, to prepare the ceremony for them on the sea. At that time, he would meet the 5 mermaids at the conferring ceremony and arrange their jobs. "His Majesty is very dissatisfied with all of you know, including me." Etnia clearly conveyed List's attitude. "His Majesty freed us from a seal. He gave us a new life and mercifully allowed us to go on a tour. However, we repaid him by not returning on time. We just want to know more about the current sea. There's no need for your Majesty to be angry. Of course, I am grateful to him for rescuing me. I will work for him and manage the sea. But as a follower, I also have the right to control my own life," Shalawala said. "This is no longer the era of the mermaids, Shalawala. But the sea still needs us mermaids to manage, doesn't it?" Etnia glanced at Shalawala. "I think it's because we've been asleep for too long that we can't keep up with the changes of the times, causing us mermaids to lose the respect we should have for the human king. Or perhaps His Majesty has been too kind to us, causing us to lose the judgment we should have." Gulvig tried to smooth things over. "Etnia, can you speak more clearly?" Etnia originally only conveyed List's attitude and did not intend to kindly remind the other mermaids. Mermaids were not social creatures. Apart from their reproductive relationships, they were all relatively independent individuals. Even in ancient times, the kingdoms of the mermaids were still at war with each other. However, looking at the few mermaids in the world, she finally sighed. "Purifying the sea is our wish, but we need His Excellency Achilles' help. His Majesty can directly influence His Excellency Achilles. Also, His Majesty is not only benevolent." After a pause, she continued, "His Majesty is a self-made king among humans. His greatness lies not only in His kindness to His followers and subjects, but also in His coldness to His enemies. Just 2 dragon knights died in His Majesty's hands. I don't want the mermaids to anger His Majesty." "Really?" Tibitas said a little awkwardly. "Who knows? I just hope that everyone can keep their attitudes in check and not let such a possibility happen." Etnia shook her head. "At the end of this month, your nobility ceremony will be held, and the development order will come soon. I think the mermaids need to act." Gulvig was still quite loyal to List. Back then, she was contaminated by the power of the cursed dragon, and without List and Ichi's help, she would have died a long time ago. She directly said, "How should we act, Etnia?" "It's very simple. The Iron Dragon warships are not fast enough, and the magic ships have not been installed yet. After the Fire Kingdom launches the development order, they need to transport a lot of materials, which happens to be what we mermaids are good at. I believe that each of US can control the water and help the fleet move forward. The speed of the mermaids was very fast. They had no problem traveling at 500 kilometers per hour in the sea, and even if they were hauling the entire fleet, they could still reach 1 or 200 kilometers per hour. From a hard island to the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom, the distance was at most 700 or 800 kilometers, which meant it would only take 4 or 5 hours. With the speed of the Iron Dragon warships and the Fire Dragon cargo ships, it would take 5 or 6 days to make a round trip. Once the mermaids participated in the transportation, no matter how many materials were transported back. The most important thing was that the Fire Kingdom could also send more manpower and material resources to the Eagle Kingdom to participate in the development order. The mermaids were not stupid and stubborn creatures. After careful consideration, everyone agreed to participate in the development order and perform well. Then, Etnia reported the matter to List. Well done, Marquis Etnia. The mermaids being able to participate in the development order is very helpful to the war. I will remember your contribution. List was very satisfied with Etnia's performance. The mermaids were a strong help if used well, but the premise was that they were used by him. A wise man submits to circumstances, and the mermaids were the same. August 6th of the first year of the Fire Calendar. With the excuse that Alonso Copernicus, the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom, attempted to carry out a conspiracy in the Fire Kingdom, the Fire Kingdom officially issued its first war order. They did not use the name Development Order. Instead, they used Disciplinary Order. The Sapphire Grand Duke could use development to describe what he had done. For List, who was a king, development was not high enough, and disciplinary was more in line with his current identity. Disciplinary was a means of the strong over the weak, similar to an adult disciplining a child. After this battle, the hinterland along the coast of the Eagle Kingdom will be completely barren. The next disciplinary order needs to be carefully planned on where to plunder from. Riding on the invisible dragon bard, List quietly came to the sky above the war zone, silently watching the orders of chivalry that were taking place on the ground. Even without the Dragon Knight to break into the city, the Fire Kingdom's orders of chivalry still crushed most of the noble orders of chivalry. The beast-taming contract brought a large number of World of Warcraft mounts to the Fire Kingdom, and the knight with World of Warcraft mounts could not be too fierce when charging. Invincible, Nine Heavens God Emperor, you're tuning in to the Eternal Immortal Ballad YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.